Richard, do we have confirmation from Owen that that is streaming?
It's just preparing to stream it now. I think you're live now, Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, can confirm you're live.
Thank you. Thank you, officers. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Colchester Borough Council's Cabinet. Welcome to councillors that are on the call. Welcome to members of the public who are watching, and to those who are watching on YouTube and re-watching it again on YouTube at a later date. This meeting is being held remotely in line with the provisions of the regulations recently introduced by the government to enable local government to make its decisions, and its decision-making meetings can be held remotely. The meeting is being broadcast on the Council's YouTube channel. The meeting will be available to view on the Council's YouTube channel afterwards. Councillors and officers are taking part in the meeting and they're requested to mute their microphones during this period. Please activate your microphone when you're invited to speak and turn the microphone off again when you have finished speaking. Julie, if you could just mute your microphone, please. Visiting councillors and members of the public and officers not taking active part in the meeting are requested to turn off their cameras until they are invited to speak. When speaking, speak clearly and slowly. Please indicate by using the raised hand function facility, and the Democratic Services officers, Richard and Owen, this evening will help us indicate that someone is waiting to speak. Thank you. So I am chairman of this panel, Mark Corey, Councillor Mark Corey, leader of the council, and I'll invite my cabinet members to introduce themselves and to confirm their attendance this evening. And that's in alphabetical order: Councillor Fox, Councillor Goss, Councillor Higgins, Councillor King, Councillor Lilly, Councillor Luxford-Vaughan and Councillor Young. So I would just take Councillor Young first as the deputy leader, and then I'll go to Councillor Fox.
Thank you, Leader. I'm Councillor Julie Young, Deputy Leader of the Council, Portfolio Holder for Culture, Performance and the Local Plan.
Good evening, Leader. Good evening, everyone. Adam Fox, Cabinet Member for Housing.
Martin Goss, Cabinet Member for Waste, Environment and Transport, and Mylem Ward, Councillor, and I can obviously confirm I'm in attendance.
Hello everybody, I'm Councillor Teresa Higgins. I'm the Councillor for Commercial Services.
Hello everybody, it's David King, Cabinet Member of Business and Resources, Mylem Ward.
Good evening, Councillor Mike Lilly, Portfolio Holder for Communities, Wellbeing, Public Safety, Ward Councillor for Old Heath, The Hive and Rowhedge.
Good evening, Councillor Luxford-Vaughan, Portfolio Holder for Customers, Ward Councillor for Wivenhoe.
Thank you all. I'll just say that I am Ward Councillor for Wivenhoe as well. That's something I did not say. And my portfolio is for Strategy and Communications. And I'll now invite the officers in attendance to introduce themselves. We have the Chief Executive, the Monitoring Officer, and the Lead Democratic Services Officer. In that order, please.
Evening, Cabinet. Adrian Pritchard, Chief Executive of the Borough Council.
Good evening, Andrew Weavers, Monitoring Officer.
Good evening, Richard Clifford, Lead Democratic Services Officer.
Thank you all, and other officers will contribute during the meeting if there is a paper that they are asked to speak on. Okay, thank you. So provisions in the Constitution around timing breaks will apply to this meeting. Can members of the Cabinet please give notice to me as the chair if they need to move away from their screen, even for short periods, and then blank their screen. Thank you. So just to introduce the work of the Cabinet, what this meeting is all about. It's for the benefit for everyone to understand that we are the executive body of the council. It's responsible for the day-to-day decision-making of the council on all of its services and makes recommendations to full council on major policy issues and on the council's budget. The Cabinet is made up of 8 councillors, each of whom is responsible for a particular range of services, and they've introduced themselves already. Moving on to item 2. Item 2 is urgent items, and there has been an urgent item that's come to us very recently. That is a report on North Essex Garden Communities Limited. It's an urgent item, as I say, having just come to us, and the report is now being shared on the screen. And we are going to just talk to this report. I have the officer Ian Vipond, I think, will give views on this report. Councillor King as portfolio holder, a visiting councillor, Councillor Dundas. I just need to double check that. So first of all, I think I'll take Councillor Dundas, and then we will move to the report to Ian and to Councillor King.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, Cabinet. Good evening, officers. Just before I start, I've just had a text message from Councillor Hazel, who is having difficulty joining the meeting. So I don't know if perhaps a member of Democratic Services could perhaps give her a call and give her some assistance. I put a written submission in on this item because I put some relatively complicated financial questions in there, and I thought it was only fair that you had free sight of them in order to be able to answer them. But I will read through it, and we'll see where we're at the end. I would support the recommendation that CBC agrees to the winding up of the project or NEGC Limited, as suggested in the report, but I do have some questions around the financial detail and the figures presented. Page 14 in the report gives some financial details, but I want to clarify whether or not they work on the assumption that CBC eventually award the 350,000, which we regularly talk about. For clarity, can it be confirmed that the situation without the 350,000, which in my submission I called scenario A, is as follows compared with scenario B, where CBC do award it, which is effectively writing that amount off because it's owed on carried costs. The scenario A I've put results in a closing balance on the 31st of March 2020 of reserves for NEGC of 532,000. Scenario B, where we do write it off, results in a closing balance of 882,000, with 7,000 still owed to CBC because there were 357,000 carrying costs and we're awarding 350. The 357 comes from the figures given in Appendix C of the budget papers presented at full council in February 2020. I do apologise that my rounding is 1,000 out, so I hope nobody tells Councillor Wood about that, but I do accept that. I think one's 883 and one's 882, but take them as both the same. My concern is that presenting the figures as including the 350,000, if that's what's happened, well, it's not clear to me that it has, is not good accounting practice. A very large question mark was placed over this money as long ago as February 2019. And it was placed there by no lesser than the leader of the council submitting an amendment to the budget in his name. It would be extraordinary, therefore, to present any figures as including these monies when they have still not been paid or approved in July 2020. The commercial equivalent of this would be a chief executive of Company A saying in February 29, we are far from sure we will pay Company B this money. And Company B presenting a reserves figure to shareholders in July 2020, still including it. That would be unacceptable in any part of the commercial world or any accounting standards. Now, being generous and assuming that that isn't the case as currently stand, with no further actions by CBC at this time, the figures tell us that the NEGC project had reserves of 883,000 on the 31st of March 2020. So my questions are, 1, can the current financial situation of today, 8th of July 2020, be confirmed? As little has happened apart from waiting for the inspector's report in that period, I would assume the only costs have been the salary of the managing director. 2, can an exact total winding up figure be stated and therefore an expected reserves balance to be distributed to the shareholders be stated? 3, I am concerned that approximate winding up costs, and they were given to us privately, so I cannot state them, in November and December 2019, are different to that stated in the report by some considerable amount, and the 100,000 pension deficit was not mentioned at that time. Can an explanation be given? 4, have we confirmation that central government will not require or ask for a share of any balance left after liquidation as repayment in part of their unspent contributions? 5, we were given very strong assurances that any GC would always be solvent, would always maintain reserves to cover any winding up costs and make payment to CBC. Should no further monies be awarded, I assume this is still the case, and from the figures presented, that does appear to be so. 6, if CBC do not approve the 350,000, then can we work on the assumption that the 357,000 will be paid to CBC as a creditor before liquidation and remaining funds distributed to shareholders? However, as they have put in more, maybe other authorities may get a pro rata or extra share of those funds by agreement, which may seem fair. And my 7th and last question is, what are the carrying costs incurred by any GC to CBC from the 1st of April 2022 date? And what are they anticipated to be on the proposed liquidation date of the 31st of August 2020? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dundas. Councillor King, do you want to come in on this, or Ian Vipond?
I'll pick it up happily, Leader. And welcome Ian rounding off if that's necessary. Thank you for what you would acknowledge is a good extensive list of questions, some of them with highly enjoyable accounting terminology wrapped into their heart, which would, Councillor Dundas, come natural to you given your professional trade and expertise. In the circumstances, what I think is better, I've had a chance to look at this this afternoon. I'll write to you next week and in the detail necessary, particularly on the numbers where we don't necessarily have exactly the same view. And in the spirit of the private discussions to which you refer, I'll ask for a reconciliation where that's helpful. I mean, the reality is that numbers taken in a moment of time do change. What will matter now, you will understand, is how we wrap up this and move forward in a way that, frankly, is productive and adds something. But I respect the questions, and with one exception, which I'll get to in a minute, I'll do my best to pick off at least the headlines as I understand them, and as I say, I'll come back in more detail. On your covering page of your 2 pages, I think the thing that I most wanted to address is this whole thing about scenario A and scenario B and what it implies. Of course, I know that the leader is an august figure, and therefore what he says really counts weight, but he will be the first to say that what we should do is apply normal and good practice. And at the heart of this, and we come to this every time we will talk about it, we will next week, is whether or not when you give your word to someone, it actually means anything. I've had a conversation with more than one colleague about it's only a moral undertaking. Well, yes, yes it is, between sister authorities in the same government, so it should count. And this really matters when you get down to whether the treatment in accounting terms, in my view. So this also gets to another favourite subject, shareholders agreement. So, you know, I have circulated 1 or 2 my own understanding. It's not a lawyer's understanding, but I do have that kind of mind, I hope, which is the shareholders agreement is an arrangement among a company's shareholders that describes how the company should be operated and outlines rights and obligations, and is intended to make sure shareholders are treated fairly, their rights are protected. Now, as whether contested or not, as in this light, it is a fact that we've set off on this enterprise. We're seeking to reform with the same partners, less perhaps one, and depending on the planning committee's decisions next week. There's a clear continuity of interest in the way in both we should work with each other and how that in turn gets reflected in how we deal with our finances. So it follows when you talk about arcane things to me, but they do matter, I know, about accrual practice, what we count and what we don't count. It is entirely reasonable that our partners should make the assumption, even if it's not your favoured scenario, which I understand, that when we've said we will pay our share, we will pay our share. That's entirely legitimate. I have had a conversation with the Section 151 officer about this and accounting principles. I understood it. He reflects back to me the same understanding about usual good practice. I realise lawyers and accountants can differ. Let's hope we don't have to go to law about this, Councillor Dundas, because if we don't pay, not only do we put off the day in which we close NEGC, but we have that kind of interesting conversation ahead of us. So to the point, accrual practice should be consistent. I am advised, it's what I asked to be confirmed, that the treatment here is judged appropriate. It treats both sides of the ledger here in the same way. So carry costs and the 350, and they're pretty much the same, are treated in a way that's consistent. The bottom line is they kind of balance each other out. So in short, as described, I think this is an entirely reasonable and absolutely not an extraordinary thing to do when partners have their partners and they're not fly by night, they're in government. They're working alongside each other, and mostly they're run by the same party, but we'll leave that to one side. On the other questions, and the one I will not address, I will not talk, and we should not talk in open forum about individuals, because that's what we're really doing. When we talk about or imply or get close to talking about salaries, pensions, redundancies, and all of that, that's very personal and unreasonable for us to talk about in open in the way that is suggested. And we have a good practice with each other here. And I know I would like and wouldn't like, and that's to be treated, with all due respect. I don't imply that you don't wish to do that, but I hope you'll understand that I will write to you in all due and appropriate detail. We will, of course, as an open body, share what we must, but it's just not right to have a conversation in that detail about, in effect, an individual. Let me go to some of the points, other points. I've addressed your most substantive in many respects, but perhaps if I can just try and walk through your other points and your question list 1 to 7. Excuse me if I flick around a bit to do just that. So your first question was around costs and so on. Let me just try and make sense of that for you if I can. Okay. The winding up decision was, as you know, only just taken, so on the 6th of July. So the winding up costs, you will understand from your professional background, and I hope all councils will understand, are only now being determined. There have been other costs for other staff and other activities, procurement and finance included, funding preparation, viability discussions, and so on. So it's going to take a little time. You would understand that, and it needs to be done well. Your second question gets the same answer, because that impacts in terms of the balance of reserves as of, and we'll get to this later on perhaps, point of clarification, it's the 31st of August, as I think the press releases have said. The 100k and all of that, for the reasons I've discussed, I don't think is appropriate. What I would sort of say is that the numbers themselves come to us from the Essex County Council scheme actuary when we get them, and when we're aware of them. They've been part of the funding equation, and as I say, I'll give you more detail when I have that. Your fourth question was around government support, and respectfully, I think we really need to think about this. We have consistently lost sight of the value we have gained by working with partners. I've always understood, some of my dearest colleagues from close to Wivenhoe who pointed out it's an awful lot of money we spend, and the answer is that absolutely we are. Colleagues across the council have said, these are big undertakings. They absolutely are. The size and scale of those undertakings drives the cost. Everybody will understand that. But here's the great news, which we keep forgetting in all of this, is if we have partners, we pay less. We have obviously only a share of the productivity, but given Colchester's strengths, we might hope to get the very best of the deal that lies ahead. But either way, that's my view. The facts are we pay 1/8 of the cost of this enterprise. When it's closed, we know exactly what it is. Government, and your question is absolutely right, Paul, will they come back to us, given that we as a council arguably might have fallen slightly short of expectation, but absolutely the collective have not. So all I can say to you is, not only is it great value for money in my view, 1/8 for the whole, I'll do that deal anytime. But we have every expectation they will not come back to us for some of the balance. And the other side of that coin is about the future. And that respectfully is what I asked us to focus on. What we got to do is move to TCB, so when the local plan committee made the decision, start to talk about what we're going to do with our partners. Only one bill, that's great. And what we do with our partners will be partnership work. And Paul, you'll understand, whether you're in our chairs or not, how important it will be to maximise that partnership. We have strong relationships, Homes England and other parts of government, as well as with our local authority partners. And I think there's a real significant prospect we'll get further financial support. So excuse me going on just a bit, but it's because that context and next steps really matters. And so our signals have to be, in my view, productive looking forward. But the question's fair, and my answer is as described. I think they won't come back for us. You ask about member contributions. NEGC do not expect to require contributions from members' authorities to cover its expenditure in 2021, including its winding up. Again, I'll come back to you, that might be a bit clearer. So thank you for allowing me to clarify that if it wasn't. If we do not pay the 2019-20 contribution, it will not be possible to recover the carrying cost. You must know that there is no real prospect that they would say, okay, then our partners, I can't speak for them, but I use a lay appreciation of how most people act when somebody keeps saying, I'll not pay my bills, but if there's anything left over in the kitty from what you've put in, I'll have my share. That's not practical. It won't happen in my view. What they do, should we next week seek to delay the winding up of NEGC, because that's what will happen. It's an open question, but the answer is the one I've just given you. And your last of 7, and thank you, because I think it does help to have this conversation. So I do appreciate you taking the time and trouble to set it out in writing as well. I do appreciate the notice. Is that the officer view is those costs are relatively minor, and we would not be seeking to recover carrying costs in 2020-21. I will say to you that I will go back and look at that, because I would want to understand that. But I do understand that in the round, when we're in transition to something different, if it's legitimate work for our officers, that might be right. So I hope that helps. I will drop you a line in the coming week, and I'm always happy to have a conversation at any time.
Thank you, David, for that long and informative update there, answering all of the questions. Are there any further points that Ian, you want to add? You're on the call to what David has just explained.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to introduce the item, but perhaps I could just make a couple of technical points, and we'll take the item as read. But if I can just, as a point of note, please note that under paragraph 4.16, the phrase "stop trading from the point of the resolution" is now stop trading from the 31st of August, and that reflects the decision that NEGC Limited Board made. Perhaps I would just also note that under paragraph 419, the paragraph implies that the next steps will include the appointment of a liquidator. But it's fair to say this will happen only and if it is in fact necessary as part of the process. If it's not required, it won't happen. Subject to those 2 points, Leader, I will leave it there.
Could I add one thing, Leader, please? And that's just on the last point, if Ian won't mind me, just to be really clear. You know, it's not, I understand it's technical language, that 419 reference, just to be absolutely clear, we have no reason to think the insolvency in the sense that everybody understands this, normal people understand this is an issue at all. It's a going concern. You know, as I say, the focus is now on how we might proceed to a better vehicle and a better way ahead. And action now, as elsewhere expressed and summarised here, is only about that necessary next steps and that move from winding up to, frankly, to moving on, recognising that the decision on the way ahead rests with the local plan committee. I would just want to say, because I think it feels right, and I know that anything positive will and can offend any, and so can anything negative. I would just sort of say, new to this as relatively I have been, I just want to acknowledge the strength of feelings that there have been around this subject. Councillor Dundas has been among many who've raised this, so have some of my colleagues. But we do have a huge prize ahead of us. We have the possibility we might start to agree a bit more about what the way ahead might be. That would be nice. Again, as I say, not in my hands. And if we did, so that's the if, there is a huge investment prize and an opportunity to deliver a garden community that, if done well, which we will all be determined to do, whatever the vehicle, whatever the form, will bring, you know, a step change. That's what we must aim for, step change in the way in which we deliver housing and taking the points many make in a better way than often we do it at the moment. So I will leave it at that. I'm just absolutely not going to speak up for this or that or the past, other than to acknowledge that getting to this point has been very difficult for many of us. It's been, before my time, it's been very difficult for our officers. And when we talk about this project, I respectfully ask me just remember there's been huge effort. And I'll mention Ian Vipond in particular, who has got the patience of a saint in my view, because for taking any and all questions and taking them again, and his team the same, rightly so, to fielding all the differences that we have and all the need for understanding we collectively and individually have. And that goes also for those in the narrow sense of Energy Seed Limited and all those who supported that project. Whatever we think for the past, that's a judgment that not now, this is about where we go next. It's huge effort and huge best endeavours. And as I say, there is a prize if we can agree on it next week. So I have nothing else to say on the paper, subject to, I think Paul's entitled to come back if he wants to, and then we go from there.
I will ask Ian just to very briefly do the headlines of the paper, just so the public actually understand fully what we're talking about. But I would like a bit more brevity, please. And then I have a raised hand from Andrea Luxford-Vaughan. Thank you.
Okay, Leader. The report itself is an urgent item. It considers the future of North Essex Garden Communities Limited, of which this council is one of 4 councils who are all shareholders in that company. It was originally set up to explore and develop options for the delivery of the garden communities in North Essex. It was not intended to be a delivery vehicle itself, as has been inferred before. With the local plan inspector's letter arriving, the local plan committee will decide which of the 2 options suggested by the inspector will be taken forward. But whichever decision it makes, we will proceed to a different stage in the process. And if the local plan committee decides that we will proceed with a garden community, then a different vehicle will be required going forward. As a result of that, the NEGC Limited Board itself met earlier this week and deemed it was appropriate to wind down its activities and cease trading by the end of August. In that context, this council, as with the other 3 councils, will have to consider as a shareholder the appropriate action following the resolution of the company board. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ian. I have Councillor Luxford-Vaughan and then Councillor Young, please.
Thank you, Chairman. As I have, as I spoke to you earlier, a considerable amount of questions, the details on this paper that I'm happy to take offline and discuss later, but certain statements between 4.4 and 4.8 need clarity. But what I would like from yourself and Cabinet is a commitment to an examination of how we've arrived at the situation we are now. I'm happy to support the motion, obviously, but certain decisions have been taken along the way to do certain things, and I think if we're to learn anything from the experience, then we need to analyse what those decisions were, whether they were the correct ones, and whether indeed they represent value for money for the public. At the end of the day, we've spent £8 million and we're going to be able to deliver, potentially, because the decision hasn't been made yet, 1,100 homes. So I'm not entirely convinced of that. We talk about there'll still be a need for a delivery vehicle. One of my serious concerns about this plan is tailgating and developers jumping on the back as soon as we've produced a DPD. So it's slightly worrying that that there's no detail in this report as to what a future delivery vehicle may look like. I assume that work's going on in the background, but I would like some reassurance that that's happening. I won't ask the question about redundancies because I understand and appreciate that we don't discuss individuals, but there is a private question I would like to discuss with Councillor King at a later stage. I just want clarification. Am I right in thinking that from the paper anyway, there is a closing report that's going to cost us £1,500 and then another, no, sorry, not 1,500, 1,500 and another further 100,000 cost? I suppose that will come in the detail of what Councillor King's agreed to give to Councillor Dundas. Could we just confirm that that will be before full council meeting next Wednesday, because I think it would be pertinent to certain other decisions we need to make then. So the last question would be, how many external contractors are currently appointed by NEGC, or are they direct appointments with CBC or other authorities?
Thank you. Some of those questions may be able to be answered now. I definitely heard Councillor King say that more detail will be coming in terms of some of those specifics about the precise costs of winding up, which he will, as he has done before, be transparent about those and share that with us all and with members. And that may also be shared ahead of the decision, as you say. It will come to full council in terms of the paper that we have, but actually this paper tonight is quite simple in terms of wrapping up and ending NEGC. So hopefully Councillor King will be able to provide that going forward. In terms of the questions about scrutinising decisions, they have been scrutinised as we've gone along by all sorts, by all parties, but I do think learning from mistakes is always important, and I think we've done that along the process, but does of course need to happen as we move forward to ensure that we cover any tracks and make sure we get the best outcome going forward for our residents. Julie Young, please.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Yeah, I think you've kind of hit the nail on the head. What I did want to indicate is I need to declare an interest as an alternate director on NEGC. But I think, certainly there's been significant compliments paid to the Cabinet and to the lead members over the last year about the transparency and openness demonstrated and the willingness to share information. And as you rightly say, Leader, it has been scrutinised and discussed on many occasions, not least by full council and as appropriate in our scrutiny committee. I think we had 3.5 hours of scrutiny meeting last night on a significant issue for the authority. So, you know, I have every confidence in the scrutiny process that we have in place to make sure that we are doing the right thing. And just to clarify, I think, you know, as a Cabinet, we understand that as Councillor King has indicated, it isn't 8 million for Colchester Borough Council. We pay an eighth of the costs of this project because, of course, this is a joint project over 4 authorities. So, as you rightly say, Leader, this is a technical paper about winding up NEGC because we're no longer in an arrangement with 4 other authorities. We're at the point of moving forward, and how we move forward will be a different mechanism from NEGC. So I do want to support the recommendations as amended, of course, in terms of the wind up date being the 31st of August.
Thank you, Councillor Young, and I think Councillor King would like to indicate and make the similar point about interest. And if there's anything more you wanted to add on Councillor Luxford-Vaughan's questions, please do.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, my apologies all listening. I should have declared I've been placed by the council. That's my role as a director of NEGC Limited. The only points I wanted to make, you've made them well, Leader, is that in the spirit of being open, we will of course both look backward but look forward, which is often more productive, but we can do both, I'm sure. I will pick up on your individual questions with the help of officers, Andrea. And I think the key point I got from this, as much as anything else, was really of assurance of that there's almost a spirit to this. This is a closure that allows us to go forward. And I think that's perhaps the one point I would close on. You know, we have to do this to move productively on. And I do hope next week that colleagues will see that hesitating on paying our share and closing up with NEGC is not only a terrible signal to our prospective and continuing partners and a watching government who want us to do this kind of thing. So I'll stop there. I'm happy to pick up points later, and the same way in which I will, Councillor Dundas, I'll try to make sure that at least the key points in a digestible fashion come back before, which was your point, Andrea, for council.
Thank you for that promise to Councillor Dundas as well. I'll just say in terms of the 8th, there's central government have given more than half of the funding towards these projects because it's a key goal for them to develop housing, and we have tried to understand that and develop in a new way. And that was the plan. And of course, we have to work forward with that, with what we've got. So thank you for those contributions. I will now move on to the vote. So Andrew Weavers, can I ask you to step in?
Can I just come back to David? I haven't had a chance to come back after.
Sorry, this is not have your say, Paul. You were able to have your untimed.
That's absolutely fine. I was just going to say I'm happy with the written answer. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Paul. And David, we're happy to give that to you. Thank you. Andrew.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. So the decisions that we need to take tonight are that Cabinet notes the recommendation of the North Essex Garden Communities Limited Board on the 6th of July 2020 to take all necessary steps to wind up the 3 local delivery vehicles, namely Colchester Braintree Borders Limited, Tendring Colchester Borders Limited and West of Braintree Limited, as set out in paragraph 4.29 of below of the report, to approve as shareholder that the council take all necessary steps to wind up North Essex Garden Communities Limited. Councillor Fox.
Agreed.
4. Councillor Goss.
4.
4. Councillor Higgins.
4.
4, Councillor King.
4.
4, Councillor Lilly.
4.
4, Councillor Luxford-Vaughan.
4.
4, Councillor Young.
4.
4, and Councillor Corey.
4.
4. That's unanimous, Chairman.
Thank you, Andrew. So that helps us move forward and helps that many people have thought we have listened and moved forward with that now. So thank you. So moving on to item 3, which is declarations of interest. We have already heard 2 tonight. Councillor King and Councillor Young declared an interest on garden communities relating to North Essex Garden Communities Limited. Are there any other expressions of interest this evening? No, none. So none for you to record, Richard, apart from those earlier. The item 4 is minutes of the meeting from the last meeting on the 3rd of June. Can I ask that we vote on those? So the monitoring officer, Andrew, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. So this is to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on 3rd of June 2020 as a correct record. Councillor Fox.
4.
4, Councillor Goss.
4.
4, Councillor Higgins.
4.
4, Councillor King.
4.
4, Councillor Lilly.
4.
4, Councillor Luxford-Vaughan.
4.
4, Councillor Young.
4.
4, and Councillor Corey.
4.
4. That's unanimous, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Now we move to item 5, which is have your say for public speakers to contribute. And we have some written contributions and also some visiting representatives. Richard, would you be able to just tell me who is actually coming this evening? And if not, can you read out those that are not here? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. We have 3 members of the public here to speak with us this evening. Richard Piotowski, Fabian Green and John Acker, Chairman.
Thank you. So Richard would go first if he would like to present his screen, present via video and unmute, then you have 3 minutes, Richard.
Good evening and thank you for your time. So my reason for being here this evening is simply to put across the point that the proposition to charge for the collection of garden waste at the curbside seemed to be a little bit of a fait accompli insofar as there was no announcement made to the public, albeit have been subsequently told it's arrived on Facebook and in local press and on local radio, but not directly to the residents that would be affected. It doesn't feel as though the proposition's being given proper scrutiny. I do understand that scrutiny was looked at, I think yesterday or the day before, and I think they shared similar concerns that other ways of addressing this matter could have been considered, and that, in my view, members of the public should be made aware of the proposition in due time and give them the ability to speak. Had it not been for a local forum next door, particularly, I would never have known about this. It would have probably gone to scrutiny and then to council, and very few, if any, residents of CBC would have actually known about this at all. So it's really more of a comment. I don't know the ins and outs of the workings of the council, but I would expect greater scrutiny and a greater evaluation and diligence on the matter. I have to say as well, I don't necessarily have an aversion to wheelie bins, nor do I have an aversion to pay if I must. It's more to do with proper process and the diligence around that. And that ends what I wanted to say this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. That was thoughtful and genuine in terms of I understand your concerns there, and I'll just try and explain some of it to you, and then I can pass to our portfolio holder. So we set in train this option to look at this because of a number of reasons, and the portfolio holder can go through those reasons. We ensured that we would go to scrutiny on this, which is the internal process, which again, the public can attend and can come and speak at, like this evening. And we ensure that we will be listening to what the scrutiny panel have to say. which will inform the discussion we have later on that topic. We've actually just been joined by the Scrutiny Chair. So we will ensure that we do that. We do ensure we communicate with the public as best as possible on all of our services. And actually during this COVID period, the council has been excellent in its role in protecting people, communicating with businesses, and supporting our communities across the borough through this. This has been a much more pressurised situation in terms of the optional paper on garden waste, so therefore timing was shorter than perhaps normally would be the case. But we have some recommendations from the scrutiny panel. We wanted to take it there, we wanted to scrutinise the decision, and we wanted to listen to what they had to say. So we're listening to you this evening, we'll listen to their contributions as well. That is what we will do. So thank you for your contribution. I'll go to Councillor Martin Goss, and then you do have a chance just to add a bit more, Richard. Thank you.
Thank you.
Martin.
Hello, yeah, thank you for the contribution, and appreciate the comments that you've raised. I think what I'll do, I'll cover this under the item that's coming later, because obviously there is input from the scrutiny panel last night, which will obviously feed into the meeting. And what I'll do is cover off around communication and the reasons for doing this, which I covered last night, but I'll go over it again tonight, so it's covered in one place. But I will obviously take into account what you've mentioned as well. So thank you for obviously taking the time to come along and raise those concerns.
Thank you, Richard, and I'll take your considerations into mind. You have said about how you understand the contribution that the paper outlined, people making a contribution. It is a discretionary service, not a statutory service, and we've also been asked by councillors to explain what that actually means, what we do and what we don't do. And in this time, we really do need the community and the council to work together on this. So I absolutely understand how you want to discuss it more. Is there anything more that you would want to add at that point?
No, thank you. Just thank you for the opportunity to at least put across my concerns, my issues and my thoughts.
Thank you. Happy for you to come again and see how the process goes forward, but glad to have you on this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Richard, who was the second speaker, please?
Second speaker is Fabian Green, Chairman.
Okay, Fabian, please.
Well, thank you, Chair, and good evening to everyone. My question is quite topical, I guess. It's relevant to this present time. It's about our Roman wall and, of course, you know, the significant part of Colchester that everyone loves and cherishes. Our Roman wall is a cherished part of Colchester's rich heritage, and it's one of the most significant features of a town centre, which makes it so special. Not only is it a key asset to our tourist sector, but is the oldest and longest Roman town wall in the country. It also brings investment in many other ways. Of course, our rich Roman history was part of the reason why I decided to study at our fantastic university, as is the case of many other history students here. No one in Colchester, and to be fair, I'm sure everyone here in the council, would want to see the Roman wall put at risk in any way. However, leaving it in the hands of a private investor has so far proven that this can indeed happen. We have already seen that the Middleborough part of the wall has been put at risk already, with billboards erected on stilts on the top of the wall, which fortunately enough has been taken down. The current owners of this section of the wall, as we all know this evening, are selling it, and I understand they are willing to provide the council with a generous offer. This presents the council with the opportunity to provide a cast iron guarantee on its future protection and preservation. There really isn't much to lose, in my opinion, and it will bring much more opportunities, such as the chance to complete the lighting up of the whole of our Roman wall. I guess my question, therefore, is it's twofold. So there's two main sections to it. The first is, I therefore want to ask the council if any considerations have been made to purchase a section of the wall from the current owners. And the second question is, if the council do in fact miss this opportunity, unfortunately do not decide to take this offer from the current owners, or a deal isn't brokered for whatever reason between the current owners and the council, what additional safeguards have been put in place to ensure that the wall will not ever be put at risk or being put at risk of being ruined or harmed in any way in the future, the risk of which has happened in the past? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fabian. I too, if you said you studied history at Essex University. I did, so I'm a fellow alumnus and very proud of our heritage that we have here and proud of the Essex University, having it on our doorstep and in my ward. What I would say is thank you for your contribution. We have committed over the last 10 years that I've been sort of supporting this administration with votes and investment into the wall. We've put hundreds of thousands of pounds into protection of the wall, and even more money in recent times into the celebration of our heritage by lighting up the wall and other aspects of our culture in the town, celebrating our heritage. So you would expect us as a council that is celebrating our heritage to look after our wall, and that's something that we have done, and we have protection of the wall, and we are absolutely solid in our understanding that we will protect the wall. And cast iron guarantees definitely that we will protect it going forward. In that vein, we have been speaking to the private company that has offered to sell the wall at this time, and we feel it is better to protect the wall. So I will have to say that those discussions are at this point private, but we will have news shortly where hopefully we will be able to celebrate that existence of the wall in total being under our protection. So I thank you for your contributions tonight, and there'll be news out soon. Hopefully we will be able to secure the wall in its entirety, as we expect it should be protected by the council. Is there anything further you will want to add, Fabian?
I guess just I understand you probably can't talk or delve into the conversations you've had with the current owners, but I guess I'd be grateful if you possibly can to be more specific on what you mean by protection of the wall. Does that mean you're considering purchasing it, or have at least given it due consideration or serious consideration?
We have given it full consideration. That is serious. And we have spoken about it at a number of times, and we have spoken with the company that is selling it, and we are coming to an agreement. So I will be able to speak to all of those interested and get some information out soon. But at the moment, that is something we are still working on to have the full confirmation. I will not say anything more at this time, because we have to make sure we're confident, absolutely confident of the agreements that we hope to have in place.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, and the next speaker, Richard.
Next speaker, Chairman, is John Acker.
Thank you. Good evening, John. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good evening, Cabinet. Thank you very much for the opportunity of addressing Cabinet. I do so on behalf of Stop 350. I believe there is a principle in public life and in the public sector where something happens that offends proper standards and raises significant public confidence in a public body, then it should be referred to another body for independent review. I am seeking such a referral in respect of the Planning Committee that was held on the 18th of June in respect to the consideration of a planning application on Mersey Island. I have this report to the Cabinet that it's completely inexplicable to a very great number, a significant number, I would say, of residents who have followed the very controversial issue of Mersey housing, that three members of the committee, who indicated in very strong terms their opposition to the application, then went on to abstain from the decision at the end. They raised very significant, detailed points in the committee itself, in the hearing, but after very, very considerable research and consideration. It's very much at the centre of this local concern that their vote against the application would have led to its rejection. There would have been a majority against it had they have voted to oppose, as they said. This is a very great disquiet about the way the committee itself was conducted as well, and the residents believe that misleading information was provided in parts. There has been, over the last weekend, very considerable publicity about this in the island's newspapers. There have been details published of the YouTube broadcast, and civic societies have expressed alarm and speculation that the committee may have had further information supplied to it in private and have been put under immense pressure behind the scenes. Also, why a legal opinion referred to from residents was not placed before the committee itself to consider. Therefore, on behalf of the many concerned residents, and I say there are many, I call on the Cabinet to self-report these issues on behalf of the Council to the National Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman for an investigation report, to self-report as other public bodies and persons in public life often do. This would allow the matter to be expedited, dealt with quickly. This is a prime example where public trust needs to be restored by independent investigation. The local community will, I believe, reserve the position depending on your response. I do hope that this matter can be given consideration tonight, and if it can't be given consideration tonight, then a reply is given to the community via me in the near future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John, for your contribution. Councillor Lilly, are you able to help with some of that planning issue within your portfolio?
Yes, Leader, and thank you, Mr. Acker, for that lengthy question. I have spoken to planning officers and head of planning. I've also had a look at the planning meeting as well to get a feel of what you said. But I think some of the issues you mentioned within the planning committee and the way it was dealt with, the members of the committee heard the reports from the officers in that, and they studied it. And as you said, they voiced their opinions, and they were quite some good questions they answered and asked, and they were answered in that. Members of the public who wanted to speak all registered, and they spoke in that meeting. So there was nobody who asked to be registered was left out. So all those who wanted to speak spoke. In fact, I think one person dropped out who had actually asked to speak in the meeting. And I believe that actually having the meetings broadcast live on YouTube, it opens up the process to more people than what we had before when it was held in the town hall as such. So I think a lot more people saw of what happened in the meeting. Now, the planning committee and members of the planning committee, they are all basically individuals. They don't belong to a party when they're on that planning committee. They all have their points of view. They all have their opinions. They're perfectly entitled to vote however they want to vote. If they abstained, then it's entirely up to them of why they made that decision, and they made the decision on the night. So I think you will have to ask them personally why they did that. It's not for us to ask them. We don't interfere with the planning committee as much as what the public think we do. The cabinet does not interfere with any public planning decisions that are made. It is all individuals, and they can do and vote exactly how they want to do. Now you mentioned some of the information that you think was given to the committee, but we haven't got any evidence on that. So I suggest that if you have evidence of information given to the committee that we haven't seen, then you need to get in touch with the standards officer, Mr. Weavers, and present your evidence to him that they were given information that we weren't aware of. Then we would look at that and see if there's been a breach of the code of standards. Any council that receives information from any developer, planner, or even a member of the public, they should declare that to the senior planning officers in the meeting and to the chair of the meeting to say they've been approached to cover themselves. But that never happened because they say they never received that information. So I reiterate, it's not for us to report that. If you have the information and please provide it to our standards officer, then he would take the action that needs to be taken. So if you have that information, could I ask you please to pass it on straight away and we can look at it.
Thank you, Mike. John, you have the ability just to come back there, but I think Mike's made it quite clear. If there is evidence you have, I think you said about Conservative councillors in Mersey, but if you can reiterate what it was about the evidence, that will be helpful. But otherwise, please respond.
Thank you very much. I will respond. The issue, and I thank Councillor Lilly for his full report, and we certainly will provide information as he's requested. The issue is not about what actually took place. It was the issue of perception, and in political life, I would submit that perception is 9/10 of what is important. The perception was for the community on West Mersey that they felt that there had not been a proper treatment of what had occurred, and it's still inexplicable why those councillors, having expressed such a very, very clear view in opposition to the application, then went on to deal with it. It's a matter which goes to the heart, Councillor Corrie, of the confidence in the borough. But I've noted what Councillor Lilly has said, and I will provide further information. And we will be considering very carefully reference to the local government ombudsman on the basis of what took place on that evening. So thank you very much, Councillor Corrie.
Thank you, John. I do understand your concerns, rightly so, about perception. That is important. And thank you, Mike, for explaining how to proceed with it. Is there anything more, Mike, you need to add, or are you fine?
No, not really. I've been on the planning committee myself, as a few other people here, and we've made decisions based on the evidence that when we sit in that committee. And I've been questioned as well. Why did you do this? Why did you vote for that? It went against everything. But it's down to the individual, I'm afraid. It might appear to be that there's a bigger picture and a conspiracy out there, but I would have thought it's just down to people who either don't want to make a decision, which is why they abstained, or they basically just decided they couldn't decide one way or the other. But if you've got the evidence, then we'll have a look at it for you, because we do want a good process so people can see that we are doing it properly.
Absolutely, thank you. And we do need to be aware that planning changes further by this government mean that I think, unfortunately, local decisions may be weakened. Moving on from that, thank you, John. We go to, I think that's the end of the public speakers. Am I correct, Richard?
That's correct, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. So that ends the have your say, and that was considerable, and it's good to have so many people coming forward and having their say. So we'll move on now to item 6, which decisions referred from the scrutiny panel. Of course, we have recommendations which we'll deal with later, but are there any substantial decisions from the scrutiny panel, Richard?
No, Chairman, there's no such items.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll move to the first main item, item 7, which are the HRA financial model and new council house building. We have no speakers on this, and Councillor Fox, portfolio holder for housing, I'll ask you to introduce the report, please.
Thank you very much, Leader. At the last Cabinet meeting, we talked about our priorities for recovery, helping Colchester, helping our residents get back on their feet after the challenges we have faced and continue to face from coronavirus. We talked about jobs and we talked about housing, and the following 2 papers deliver on both. So looking at the first paper in front of us on the housing revenue account, the paper covers 2 main sections, really, setting out the business plan for the housing revenue account, and then looking at the opportunities available to us for further opportunities to support housing across the borough, and to look to support our residents, and many of those, as we know, struggle to access good quality affordable housing, and we have nearly 3,000 people on our housing needs register. The paper sets out that there's a £52 million improvement over the next 30 years due to the borrowing rates available to us and due to the good management of the housing revenue account. The paper runs through a variety of different modelling scenarios that would enable us to deliver more homes for Colchester and better homes for Colchester. The paper continues to set out that we're able to deliver our programme of 350 additional affordable homes over the next 5 years. The paper provides the opportunities available to us and the options for further scoping additional projects. If I can take you through what those are. I don't know whether Richard is able to provide the slides as part of the fantastic. So if we move on to the next slide, please. So we'll be able to deliver additional housing through garage sites. What you see on this slide here is the phase 1 garage sites that were delivered some years ago. This was part of our original programme delivered by my predecessor as the portfolio holder for Housing Councillor Bourne. And we have an additional phase 2 of garage sites that are coming forward for delivery on the next slide. So this is a mock-up of some of the housing that we're looking to deliver, and on the next slide as well, please. And what we're able to deliver here is really good quality, affordable housing for our residents. And we're looking to deliver both these phase 2 sites in the coming year, but also looking at a further phase of garage site development. If we can move on to the next slide. And what you can see here is the site at Military Road. So we have our own council-owned land that we're looking to develop. And this site at Military Road will deliver 100% affordable housing. These sites are being taken forward in partnership between Colchester Borough Council, Colchester Borough Homes, and Colchester Amphora, which is our wholly owned housing company. If we can move on to the next slide. And this will deliver a mixture of different housing for our residents. And it's exactly this good quality, affordable homes that we're looking to develop further. If we can move on to the next slide, please. And these slides provide a computer-generated imagery of what Elfreda House will look like, which is the sheltered scheme that we're currently redeveloping. If we move on to the next slide. This is a whole-scale redevelopment of our sheltered properties, and we're looking to develop a pipeline of further redevelopments. We've already identified 2 further schemes earmarked for the early stages of delivery, and we will look to develop further on our sheltered housing. What we know is that the existing schemes that we've redeveloped at Worstop House and Enoch House really provide homes that are fit for the future for those residents that need sheltered accommodation. We're also looking at further opportunities, including regeneration opportunities on a town centre site, through estate regeneration and through further developments alongside our housing company, Colchester Amphora. These developments will deliver investment in our local community and our local economy. And I ask that Cabinet pass a recommendation set out 2.1 to 2.7 in the report. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Adam. Those slides help just to bring home the investment that we've made and will be making. So thank you for that report. And also those plans that have been in place, some of them have been through planning, some of them have got permission going forward, and others still remain in the planning process. Julie, please.
Yeah, leader, I just think we should really celebrate this report. And I just wanted to say how enthusiastic I am to see this come forward. And just to dwell on Enoch House for one moment, thinking about what we can do at Elfrida House to make some really good quality accommodation for our elderly people. One of the things I'm really proud about regarding Enoch House is the inclusion of a sprinkler system, and it was way before we had Grenfell. But you know, that has really made that accommodation so safe for those residents. And I remember one of my constituents who I've known for a very long time, when she moved into Enoch House, she was in tears, and she said she'd never been happier, and she could never believe that she would get a home of such high quality. So I think, you know, at cabinet meetings, you know, we have long evenings, but I think we should celebrate our proposals this evening, because this will give jobs for people in Colchester, and it will give much needed social housing for the people of Colchester. And I just wanted to celebrate that, really.
Absolutely, Julie. Thank you for that. That's absolutely right. And it's really positive to see this report come forward. You're right, and Adam's presented it very well. It is about jobs for people locally, and it is about homes for people. Homes, not just houses. These are homes for people who really need it. And I went with Adam to one of the first meetings we had at Elfrida House, where we listened to what the residents had to say, and we tried to absolutely explain to them that this was an opportunity to improve and expand, to update, to make the most brilliant example of sheltered housing schemes that we could make, because we care about our residents and we care about the environment as well, in terms of updating them to be a much better standard, which I know Enoch House was one of the first that we did to a much better standard, and Warsnop House as well. So it is really a positive step for homes and for jobs for our people in Colchester. So thank you. I do not see any other hands up, so I would like to ask if we can support Adam with his report, and I'll move to Andrew Weavers for the vote.
And that there are 7 long recommendations on this report. Do you want me to read them all out?
Because they are presented in front of us, no, thank you. I think it is clear if we keep them up as we vote, please.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. Councillor Fox?
4.
4. Councillor Goss?
4.
4. Councillor Higgins?
4.
4. Councillor King?
4.
4. Councillor Lilly?
4.
4. Councillor Luxford Vaughan?
4.
4. Councillor Young?
4.
4. Councillor Corey?
4.
4. That's unanimous, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent. Moving on to the next item, which is also to do with housing. So Adam will present it next, is the award of 3 contracts for the construction and delivery of 24 new affordable homes at the 4 sites explained across Colchester. Adam, please.
Thank you very much, Leader. So this paper sets out how we are going to deliver those plans that we have been talking about. And it's really part of us being able to support the local economy and local construction firms as well. And what's really important about this report as well is that the sites we're delivering affordable housing on are across the borough, and that they are in both rural and urban locations in the borough. And I think that's absolutely vital, that we are securing affordable housing in areas across our patch. The contracts have been processed, and one of them is ready to award, and I'm seeking delegated authority to award the others. What's really good about this report is that the council proactively engaged with local contractors to gain market feedback, particularly in the first couple of months of lockdown. We were keen to support the local construction industry, and they were keen that a pipeline of work was available to them as we came out of lockdown as well. This was evidenced by the high level of interest. We were approached by 20 companies around some of these contracts, and the number of bids we received was 9. Construction has a significant multiplier effect in the local economy, and it's one of those areas that can really deliver for local companies. It can deliver for local jobs as well. And so I'd ask Cabinet to support the recommendations in the paper 2.1 to 2.6 as set out.
Thank you, Adam. This is about delivery of some of those plans that you talked about before. And as you say, once again, about using local contractors to deliver those for our residents in need. So I think the same sort of comments as the last paper would suggest that we're going to welcome this. I see no hands up, so we have talked about this at meetings coming forward. So I believe that Cabinet are supportive, and I will move to the vote. Andrew, please.
Thank you, Chairman. The resolutions are on the screen. Councillor Fox.
4.
4. Councillor Goss.
4.
4. Councillor Higgins.
4.
4. Councillor King.
4.
4. Councillor Lilly.
4.
4. Councillor Luxford Vaughan.
4.
4. Councillor Young.
4.
4. And Councillor Corey.
4.
That's unanimous, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. And moving on now to item 8, the waste and recycling new strategic priorities. So this is an item where we have had scrutiny on it yesterday, and we will be asking the Chair of Scrutiny to come forward shortly. I'll just move to the portfolio holder, first of all, just to outline a few of the key points of this and where he's willing to take it at this point. So Councillor Goss first, please.
Yeah, thank you. We obviously spent a good 3 hours discussing the paper at Scrutiny last night. The reason that this paper has come forwards, it maps back to the finance paper that was presented and agreed in June at Cabinet to outline the current financial position, certainly where the council is obviously, like many other councils, including Chelmsford, which is talking about similar figures, where due to a lack of income from other revenue generating services, obviously we don't run the council just from council tax. It's run from many other sources of income, including car parking, leisure world, etc. And obviously at the moment, because of COVID-19, all of those are not generating income. So unfortunately, we've had to look at generating other areas of income, and because garden waste is a non-statutory service, 65% of councils charge for it. Some have been charging for it for 15 or 20 years, and government allows that to happen because it is not seen in the waste hierarchy as being something that must be collected. It's something that as non-mandatory, as I said last night. So obviously we've looked at the service on a wider basis. During COVID, obviously we, along with many other councils, reduced the waste service and basically had to reduce that because of self-isolating staff, etc. And at the same time, we've obviously reviewed that operation. So as part of this paper, one of the recommendations that we were looking to do was roll out wheelie bins for garden waste only, because the level of muscle injuries and sickness to our hardworking frontline staff is higher, where they're lifting tons and tons of waste, garden waste in the Hessian bags. The Hessian bags also, of course, blow away, and also our waste staff walk 11, 12, 13 miles a day on the routes they do. So when you're picking up 10 or 12 tons of garden waste, which is what the crews do, then that it causes significant wear to muscles, and hence when you've got wheelie bins, which is what 83% of councils use in some form across the UK, then the machine does the lifting. The frontline staff still have to do lots of walking, but obviously they're not physically lifting 10 or 12 tons every day. And they work 10-hour days, a good 40-hour week at least, and that is physically demanding. I've been out and done it. I've done a garden waste round for a whole day. I've been out on the black sack, so I know exactly what it's like. It's physically demanding. So not only is it looking at the income, it's looking at the health and well-being of our residents and of our staff, and also what other councils do. Now, obviously, the reason we took the report to scrutiny was to ensure that we listen to concerns, not just those of residents, but obviously of councillors and also staff as well. So all of that has been fed into scrutiny last night. In fact, pre-scrutiny is part of the process that something major like this would go to or go through. And certainly, you know, it was a good 3-hour meeting where some good points were made, and absolutely we should listen to those concerns. As I said publicly, I don't actually agree with introducing garden waste charges. I was actually asked the question by Councillor Bourne last night, if there was something you could change about the proposition, what would it be? And I said, actually, remove the charge. But we also know that we've got a £3 million gap. We cannot add that to council tax because by law you can only add 4.99% before you call a referendum. And of course, council tax is made up, depending on where you live, of up to 5 different authorities. That will be Essex, who take the majority if you look at your bill, the fire authority, the police authority, which gets slightly more than Colchester does, and then Colchester, which gets, for a Band D property, £190. So actually, when you're raising it, we would be raising it on the £190, not the 2,400 or whatever you're paying, depending on what band you're on. And where you've also got a parish or a town council, places like Wivenhoe, Mersey, Myland, Stanway, you're also going to pay a precept on top of that. And interestingly, by law, that precept, but only for parish councils, actually is not governed by, I think, by the 4.99%. They can actually put it up higher without a referendum. But that explains the position we're in. It does explain that government recognises this for decades has been a non-mandatory service. Obviously, Colchester is now in the minority of councils that doesn't charge for it, and it is regrettable that we've even had to look at this. Government actually underwrote all the losses for councils. If you take Chelmsford, they've announced also, similar to us, there's a £10 million gap in revenue and income. Very similar to Colchester, very similar councils, both very prudent and actually very low council tax. When you compare, and David outlined it last night, to other councils, Colchester on its £190 for a Band D is in the lower echelons of the league tables. So overall, we have been a low council tax authority, and also, of course, we froze council tax, I think, for 6 years. So again, we did do that as over a 6-year period from sort of 2010 onwards, I seem to recall. So I hope that shows the challenge. I hope it shows personally, I don't like this, right? But we're asked to look at difficult decisions, and that is part of an elected responsibility of councillors, because by law, we have to ensure a balanced budget, because actually, if you don't have a balanced budget, there are legal consequences of that. And of course, everything is in the public domain, everything is published. So, but we are a listening council. I certainly, along with colleagues, do listen. And certainly there'll be some points made, I'm sure, by Councillor Bentley and Councillor Bourne from last night's meeting, which we can then address afterwards. But I hope that outlines the paper, the difficulties we face, actually the health and well-being that we're looking at for our staff with wheelie bins and for residents. And of course, also not everywhere in Colchester is suitable for wheelie bins. There's between 4,000 and 6,000 houses that you simply wouldn't give a wheelie bin to. You wouldn't put them in the Dutch Quarter, that would be a heinous crime. And you wouldn't put them in certain places like in Newtown, even parts of Mile End, and there's other areas. So we've obviously said the criteria for that, and obviously that would be reviewed as part of that process. So happy to take any questions, but I hope that gives you a good outline of the challenge, why we're looking at it, and the wider context.
Thank you, Martin. That does give a wide context of it. You talked about the money. 3 million was one of the areas where we're hoping to get savings. If you add up the complete the black hole that we have in the finances due to COVID, despite being a very prudent council, we do have that big pressure. It can escalate to about 12 million in terms of what we need to find, and Councillor King will explain that later. And actually, this is one of the key reasons that we have to ask for contributions, as well as looking at council services that will have to be trimmed, efficiencies that will have to be made, redundancies that we'll have to look at, ways in which we could get in other income. There's so many different ways, including council tax rises, that we will have to complete our budget, because the government did promise they would look after us, and they would actually look after us as we looked after our residents. We have done that, but now they've said they will not contribute to the 5% first of all, and then 75% on top of that. So actually it's going to be less than what we had hoped from government. They have actually walked back on their promise. So this is one of the areas where we're going to have to be honest with the public, that we are going to have service costs or service cuts that we need to really think honestly about. And the speaker earlier understood some of that, I think, when he put it forward. And you've put that context out there, Councillor Goss. And I think you've communicated that we're listening to Scrutiny, who have asked us to pause this proposal, pause this paper. And I feel what you said, I just want to check you are happy that that will be the case, in your asking for Scrutiny to just lay out those recommendations, but you are minded to take that.
Absolutely, very happy to take on board what Scrutiny have said, pause the paper, and obviously look at and act on the 5 recommendations, which we can obviously outline and discuss.
Thank you. So listen, pause and act. Okay. So I will ask Councillor Bentley, as chair of the Scrutiny panel, to come forward, please, because I feel it is the ownership of that panel on the Scrutiny recommendations. So it'd be important that you speak to us about those, but you have just heard a positive acceptance from Councillor Goss of those recommendations. Councillor Goss presented to the Scrutiny meeting last night. I was there, and so were many other colleagues. It was a long meeting, a really worthwhile meeting, with lots of contributions from councillors and lots of analysis of this paper. So Kevin Bentley, are you able to show your screen and to unmute, please? Kevin, are you there? There you are.
I was just waiting for officers to allow me to do that, which I've just done. So thank you very much indeed, Councillor Corey and Councillor Goss. I've always felt it important in my near 20 years in this authority that chairs of Scrutiny, when representing recommendations from the panel, should come in person to the Cabinet and explain these recommendations. So thank you for that. Thank you also for the opportunity to pre-scrutinise this, albeit 24 hours ago, but we did it, and we had a very good attendance at that Scrutiny panel from members and the public alike. And I think we gave it in 3 hours, which is one subject to talk about, but a very important subject. We gave it a very good scrutiny session, and lots of very important points were raised and questions by the panel were answered. So I just want to mention a couple of things. I won't read through all the recommendations, you've got them, and perhaps the officer could share them on the screen so we could see those as we start talking about them. I did just want to highlight one thing. Through the course of the investigation and the inquiry by Scrutiny, there were some mistakes made in the paper that were unearthed. For instance, one of them, where it clearly says in the paper, and I don't know if it has been changed, I request it was for you, but I didn't see it when I logged on earlier, that an additional vehicle would be purchased, and we were told clearly that wouldn't be. I think it was described as a typo. That's not a typo, that is a mistake. So we want to be clear that you're not purchasing a vehicle, and perhaps that could be repeated tonight. But also, on the gardening club question, it was talking about the percentage of residents who would join it. I think it meant households. If you're talking about residents, you would need an awful lot in your 25% initially, where households are slightly different. So just for the sake of accuracy, I think that needs to be changed and fully understood by Cabinet members if that change hasn't been made already or explained. So the recommendations you can see in front of you, and I'd like to thank Councillor Goss and Mr. Dodd, who came along last night and then presented to the panel and answered questions in a full and frank way. And yes, Councillor Goss was very clear last night, as he has been tonight that he doesn't actually personally support this, but we understand why. And I think the recommendations that we've come to and agreed actually reflect the fact that the council does face financial pressures, as does everyone in the country because of COVID. And I think we've asked through that we would help you by pre-scrutinising decisions. Scrutiny isn't there to make decisions, it's there to scrutinise them, but we want to be as helpful as we possibly can. There's just one question I want to ask and clear up for accuracy's sake. In the papers you can see the original recommendations are there, and then it comes to ours with the word furthermore. I think it was very clear with scrutiny last night that our recommendations would supersede the current recommendations in the paper. Therefore, by pausing it, you pause the whole thing. The way it is written, so I'm prepared to be corrected, and you of course can make the decisions you want to make tonight, that the first 2.1, 2.2 and 2.3 in the proposal, not that you it'd be useful to hear. I don't intend to take any more of your time. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I will listen to the rest of the debate.
Councillor Goss, do you want to just respond to that? I think it's clear that you have said that you will pause the paper and take the recommendations in full instead.
Absolutely, unequivocally, yes. 2.1 to 2.3, I'll get my teeth in properly, must see my dentist. Absolutely, they are parked without question, okay? So the only thing we are voting on to take forwards tonight are the 5 recommendations moved by Councillor Tina Bourne, so thank you Tina for the articulation, and then an extra insertion by Kevin at the end of one extra recommendation, unanimous agreed by 8 members. Of course, what we're looking to do is create a task and finish group to go off urgently and have a look at this and obviously tackle the items that were listed. So absolutely, that is what we will be debating and voting on tonight. We are not voting on 2.1 to 2.3 about adopting garden waste charges, wheelie bins or anything else, just to be absolutely crystal clear. We are only taking forwards the 5 points from last night.
Thank you. And just to be clear, what we have done with the 5 points is I slightly reordered them just for presentation purposes, because the 3 top ones that we have now are focused on the garden waste situation, and the bottom 2 are about financial difficulty that we face due to COVID and how we should lobby government to get them to ensure their promised support comes, which unfortunately we don't think more money will come. So we therefore have to look at the financial pressures and how we're going to raise the money to cover for the budget. One other thing I would say is taking on board the full scrutiny principles and recommendations. I think we have to be clear that we do need to act with efficiency and quickly, as a task and finish group should. And this actually could be a good example where a task is given and it needs to finish in terms of turning around some of the details. And we will give the full details that we can to those that task and finish group, which will be made up of cross-party groups from the council. And we hope that it will be able to deliver fairly soon some recommendations back to Cabinet based on the full information that they will get. I'll pass now to the next speaker, which is Councillor Bourne, who hopefully agrees with that and agrees with the change of the presentation, as you're one of those, well, the key person who put the recommendation forward.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you to Councillor Bentley for presenting the panel's recommendations. Thank you to Councillor Goss as well for being very clear, because I was going to ask the same question as Councillor Bentley. So I think that's very clear what these recommendations mean for this report going forward. I was also on the panel last night taking part in the debate. And what do we collectively know now? Well, no surprise, no one wants to pay for a service they currently receive for free. Charges for garden waste collection are unpopular amongst residents who have got in touch with their ward councillors or expressed their view on social media or in the press. Those without gardens or who home compost are fairly indifferent to charges, as they are not benefiting from the current universal service but paying through their council tax for it. On the question of charges for vulnerable residents, which was of great interest to the Labour group, the portfolio holder assured the panel that the smaller shoulders would not bear the biggest burden, and that detail was to be fleshed out. But as the discussion unfolded, it became increasingly clear that the panel would not be endorsing the garden waste charges proposals with just a few technical tweaks. Therefore, by listening to the debate and taking residents' views into account, it became obvious that a proposal was needed. And I moved to the scrutiny panel that these recommendations you see before you tonight, bar one, which was added by Councillor Bentley, thank you, Councillor Bentley, were taken and unanimously agreed. Now, councils have a huge financial hole to climb out of, and Cabinet, I don't envy your role in this. Colchester Borough Council face a budget gap we know of approximately 9 million, and plugging that gap involves tough decisions. It could involve putting up existing charges. It could involve charging for free services. It could involve cutting staff or cutting services. And this government must make good on its promise to reimburse local councils for the costs incurred due to COVID work. Our COVID work in this council has been lauded as highly effective and responsible. Our staff have gone above and beyond in order to continue delivering services to residents and to be innovative in creating new services and working with partners to deliver things that people really, really need. This council has had some funding from government, but it's not enough to stave off future cuts or service charges or council tax increases. Without fair funding from this government, then unpopular proposals will have to come forward in order to balance our budget. So I'm looking forward to a mature, informed and responsible response to these recommendations from all councillors, because we're all in this together, and all 50 councillors need to understand what is and isn't possible within our budget envelope. The future of council services is too important to play party politics with. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Bourne. I absolutely concur with everything you've just said there. Spot on, thank you. Is there anything, Councillor Goss, you want to react to now, or will you wait till the end?
I'll wait to the end.
Okay, thank you.
You're on mute, Leader.
Thank you. That rarely happens. So unmuted and unfettered, I will go to Councillor Gerard Oxford, please.
Thank you, Councillor Corey. I've changed my speech for tonight. Given the recommendations from Scrutiny last night. The one point in relation to item D, my point is, and been asking for this for months, is that in order for the task and finish group, as it now will be, and for the council as a whole, all 51 of us, to make a decision, we actually need to have detailed lists of every statutory service we provide and the costs of it, and also the detailed list of the would like to provide services and the costs, for the task and finish group to look at those details to then make a mature decision. And I'm picking up on Councillor Bourne's recent comment. Without that, which is why I was going to say this whole proposal is premature, because we haven't had that information. We desperately need that information. And if we get that as part of D of the proposal, then we will be able to move this forward. I can say from a ward councillor perspective, we have had numerous residents very against this. So apart from that, I think we've had 2 that were in favour. The rest in majority were hugely against. I think that will do for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Oxford. And I'm aware the public may not be yet that you put in a motion to full council on statutory and discretionary services, and you've explained that in part there, and I thank you for that. I tried to express some of that earlier, and what I think Councillor Bourne has done in this recommendation is listen to your point there, and I think you're absolutely right, and it will help us as members and members of the public to understand what statutory and discretionary services are, who actually runs some of the services, because many think that we run some of the services that Essex County Council actually do run. And that's something, a piece of work that we are picking up, because I think you're absolutely right. So it'll be picked up as part of this group, but also I think it'll be picked up as a wider piece of work that should go to all councillors. So actually we're addressing your motion earlier on, because I think it's so pertinent to do so. And I know Councillor King.
Can I just ask as well that any decision that the Task and Finish group come through with should ultimately go to full council for final decision, because I believe it forms in effect an emergency budget.
Right, I'll go to Councillor King first, and then I'll come back to that. Councillor King, please.
I thank Councillor Gerard Oxford, as also Beverly, Bev, for speaking up last night, and Councillor Gerard Oxford for pointing out that all conversations and all discussions are best informed by good information. So I've followed through in the last day by asking officers where this is. You will understand the finance team is small, hard pressed, end of the year, financial crisis, lots of work required for the ministry so that we can submit our accounting, which in turn then drives what help we can extract. So I have checked, however, that the task understood and the work will be underway. My best guess is that this might be a week away, which would at least allow and inform, as you've suggested, Gerard, that task and finish discussion. It is a complex piece of work because it gets into the very entrails of what our 750 odd staff do and what we do with our partners. And I have to say some of it is easily misunderstood. And I mean that as in I could, any one of us could. So the key will be not just lists and rows of functions, if I put it that way, but also nor just numbers of people or cost. It will be understanding what they do, what they deliver, and that will give a real sense of depth to it. Have started that work at the top level, and it's plain that all the choices, I'll say no more, will be difficult. So I will want to make sure I take a personal interest in this and make sure that we give a product that, as you said, Leader, could be really helpful to all councillors as well as helpful to the Task and Finish group. My aim is to try and see if we can get there in a week, but I hope for a little bit of understanding about the complexity of what we're doing whilst we do so much else. Thank you.
I welcome that. Thank you, Councillor King, coming as quickly as possible. And I know that you'll be taking a paper just explaining the finances in terms of how we've had to react to COVID. Both there is a paper here, but that will be expressed at full council too. And also that this will go to the Task and Finish group. And we hope that with all that information, as quickly as you can get it to them and as quickly as Councillor Goss can get it to them, they will have that and be able to report back to Cabinet, and it's more likely that we'll have an extraordinary meeting in order to discuss this issue in full and the full recommendations from that group as well. So that's really important. A cross-party group, all groups on the council represented with all the information they need. So that is listening, as Councillor Goss explained earlier. I'll move on now to listen to another representative. So we have Councillor Sue Lissamore, please.
Good evening. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak tonight. I won't go through my whole speech I did last night. Just wanted to make some bullet points really to just emphasise where we are with this. I think what came across yesterday was that this is the wrong time with residents suffering financially already, that it was wheelie bins by stealth, that the IT systems are already struggling and need fixing before any changes, that the longer collection times that wheelie bins need It means perhaps the service cannot cope, as we saw during COVID. It's a more complicated system, as it's joint bags, wheelie bins, as Councillor Goss has said. Some areas are not suited to wheelie bins. It alienates residents who are not online. It will increase fly tipping. It will add recyclable materials to the black bags. Composting at home is a science, and it's very difficult to do. And also the Shrub End recycling site needs reorganising before Colchester Borough Council starts sending more vehicles there. Residents felt it would increase bonfires, and we felt that it breached the climate emergency agenda that this council has already agreed. I just read out part of my final paragraph from yesterday, because I'd really like it to be noted. Our huge thanks to all our refuse staff. And what I said was thank you for coping with what has been a difficult year. Thank you to all the support staff, from customer services through to all the back office to the managers. Times have been very, very hard for them, so I really feel that we ought to thank them again for the service that they've done. You have said we're all in this together. I agree with that. So share the information with all political groups about non-statutory services. But what question I would like to ask Councillor Goss is, what does he see as the time frame for this? When can residents expect to see this back? When would Councillor Goss like to see it back? Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just make one comment. And I know you are a member of Essex County Council, but the issues with the site, we have tried to deal with Essex County Council about improving the issues of the waste and recycling site, and unfortunately it's not been forthcoming. So we have really tried with them in order to make that more sustainable, and we have endeavoured to make that better on that site for our residents, but it has been difficult, and unfortunately we have faced issues with Essex County Council on that. But I'm sure Councillor Goss will answer those questions wrapped up at the end. Thank you. And I'll move now to Councillor Hazel, please. Councillor Hazel, are you there?
Oh, hello.
Hello, we can hear you. So far away.
Oh, good. Thank you. I'm not sure if this is the right section for me to be talking to, because it was a question I have to Councillor Corey on a matter in Shrub End. I think you're still discussing the waste issue, aren't you?
We are. Under what item did you want to speak?
Well, I thought I was going to be under Have Your Say. Unfortunately, I've had gremlins in my system, and I was unable to join you by video, despite officers' heroic efforts to get me signed in. But the Have Your Say came and went. So I'm actually quite happy to contact you tomorrow. I did send you an email last Friday, so I was hoping for an answer to it. So I'm happy to forego now and take this offline and speak tomorrow, or contact tomorrow.
Thank you, Councillor Hazel. I was made aware that you may contact me, but I haven't received that email yet. So please check that it go to the right address. If not, if you do want to send it in to the Democratic Services officers to make sure it comes to me, or if not, happy to speak over the phone. But yeah, happy to take that offline with the details in an email once we find that, and hopefully there's no gremlins happening in the system again. But if you could make sure the email is correct, then I will deal with that for you. Thank you.
Fine. Thank you very much.
Thanks for being patient. Goodbye. Okay, we'll move on to, I think, Councillor Beverley Oxford now, please. Councillor Oxford, are you there?
Sorry, Mr. Leader, this is Owen Howell, Democratic Services Officer. Councillor Beverly Oxford appears to have left the meeting.
Right, we did have her down to speak, but okay. Right, we'll have to move on then. Are there any other speakers in the list? I think we have exhausted them all. Richard?
There are no more speakers listed for this item, Chairman.
Thank you. So I'll move to Councillor Goss just to round up some of the discussion. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a good discussion, some good further input tonight, which obviously will all get fed into the Task and Finish group. So the Task and Finish group will be made up of Conservative, Liberal Democrat, Labour, Green and Highwoods Independent. So every single party will be represented so that every view can be taken into account, but the work will be at pace and obviously lots of information will be fed in both of a financial an operational set of issues into the group. I would hope they would come back probably within the next month or so with some findings and recommendations so that we can try to move forwards on options which they will come forwards with. And the reason the time is of the essence is because obviously the budget gap is going to continue, and obviously we need to look at options to ensure that you know, we've got some options on the table. So it's an all-party Task and Finish group, which is great because all councillor groups are then represented, but we will be moving at pace and appointing relevant people from groups to that shortly so that we get this moving. It's an action-centred group, and we've obviously got responsibilities there to move forwards. Yeah, Mark, you've covered the Essex County Council piece for 6 years. I think we've been trying to get Essex to either replan, move, work with Colchester, as Essex owns all of the recycling centre site. We own part of the site which obviously we use for storing our recyclables that we collect before they go off to be processed, and obviously our staff facilities and our vehicle storage for the dust carts and other vehicles. That's what we use it for. There is no budget and there is no appetite to do this at Essex. That's the frank answer, being honest about it. And obviously Essex, in fairness to them, is going to be under the same financial pressures as other organisations. Particularly, they've got some of the big issues like education and social care, where the bills for those over COVID period will be astronomical, and they're certainly not going to get that back from government, I doubt. And of course, all the other issues mentioned around composting, we've certainly said in the paper, and this will go into the Task and Finish group, that you know, community composting is popular and would be supported. And also, you know, dealing with enforcement around bonfires and certainly fly tipping, which has come up. But that will all be fed into the group. It was in the paper, but we're not taking that paper forwards at this moment in time. We're feeding all that detail to this group that will look at it and come back quickly with some recommendations on how we move this forwards, how we fill that budget gap. And also look at some of the operational issues we've raised. You know, Hessian sacks blow away as a cost there to the council every year. It's frustrating for residents when they come home and the neighbours might have picked the bags up by mistake, or they've just mysteriously disappeared and blown away, which happens quite often. Obviously, there's a cost to that and environmental impact as well. Wheelie bins are aligned to do so. So overall, thank you for the input. We are listening genuinely. Everyone is going to be having their feet held to the fire on this across the chamber, because we can't just say we don't like that. You need to come up with answers that you do like, or you think will serve the purpose of dealing with the budget issues, which David will talk about later. So thank you. I've got nothing more to add other than let's adopt the recommendations from the scrutiny panel and move it forwards.
Thank you, Councillor Goss. Just a few things to reiterate. Like you, I think the Task and Finish group needs to act once the information is got to it quickly, and it needs to act within a time period that is quick, so we are able to get back to a cabinet meeting with the recommendations, and that means sure the recommendations are transparent and given to all councillors. And actually the part of the recommendations that Councillor Oxford talked about was the statutory and non-statutory services. We make sure those go to all councillors as well. That's really important. And then this group will feed back to Cabinet with all of the recommendations that all groups have been able to feed into. So that will be really important. for us to listen like we said we would. So overall, I think acting with speed, acting with transparency, listening to the public, listening to members is what we're going to do, and that will feed back. And it's likely that within weeks we'll have a date where these recommendations could then come back to a cabinet meeting, and we could fully look at all of the recommendations that they come forward with. And we have actually, as you have said, ensured we fully implement all of the scrutiny recommendations. So can we go through those recommendations and vote on them, please? If we could put those recommendations just A to E on the screen, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Sorry, Chairman, Councillor Julie Young has a hand raised.
I didn't see that, thank you. So I'll move to Councillor Young, please.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Just a small point before we move to the vote. Given that these are the recommendations of the scrutiny panel, which we are about to vote on, I wondered if Councillor Bentley is still listening in and on the line, whether we could ask him if he's happy to endorse the timescales that we are proposing, because we do need to do this quite rapidly. And I think it's really important to make sure scrutiny is on board with, you know, complying with that speed in terms of turning this around, because we do need some urgent decisions on this.
Thank you.
I'm still here if you want me to answer.
Yes, Kevin, we welcome your thoughts back.
So, well, the simple answer is I am not the scrutiny panel, just the chair, and I can't speak on behalf of them. So if you want to bring it to a scrutiny panel on those timeframes, we can convene, and I will take counsel from my fellow councillors and come back to you on that point.
Thank you. What I think we'll do is ensure that we have a number of opportunities for the Task and Finish Group to meet over a period of time where we can deliver to them the information that they need. The information is predominantly there. We do need to ascertain more, take some interest from the public about signing up to any scheme of any kind on garden waste. And I think there's more information, as talked about, that the paper just needs to be checked on, and more information given. Some of the questions that scrutiny have asked can be wrapped up into that. But I do think it's important for us as Cabinet to agree these recommendations, but with a task that will finish, so a task that will be committed to and to be looked into in depth with all the information over a period of time that is manageable, so that the organisation can then know in which direction it is going to continue on with. I think that is important. So when we accept these, I think it is with the Cabinet steer that we would give them the full information. We'll address the issues outlined in D and ensure that they're shared with all councillors, and that we act with pace so that this is delivered so that we can understand where the organisation needs to go and how we address some of those budget issues that are outlined in D and in E, about how we deal with the COVID situation, where we find ourselves with immediate problems with the finances, and we need to ensure that we understand, the public understands, members understand where we get those monies from. Are we happy with that? Councillor Young, do you agree? Is that preferable? Okay, thank you. So we'll move to a vote then on those recommendations with that spirit in mind, of working at pace in order to bring it back to a Cabinet meeting where we can listen to those recommendations from across group of parties. Andrew, please, to the vote.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Fox?
For.
For. Councillor Goss? For. Councillor Higgins?
For.
Councillor King?
For.
Councillor Luxford-Vaughan? For. Councillor Young? For. And Councillor Corey? For. That's unanimous, Chairman. And
excuse me, but you left me out, but it's 4 anyway.
I beg your pardon, Councillor Lilly. Chairman, as a consequence, you voted on those recommendations from the scrutiny panel. You've agreed to withdraw the recommendations 2.1 to 2.3 in the Cabinet report. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. thank you all on Cabinet, and thank you for the guest speakers who came along to speak. All of that has been recorded and listened to and taken into account. Thank you. So we will move on. And actually, I think at this point it would be right to have a comfort break, a small comfort break, unless people feel otherwise, but it is the time where perhaps we could adjourn for a few minutes and then come back. Richard, is that acceptable at this time?
Yes, that's fine, Chairman. Can I just remind members that the stream remains live whilst we adjourn. So just turn your cameras and your microphones off whilst we're on the break.
Okay, in order to get back quickly, if we can aim for 8:10, please. So that's about 6 minutes. See you shortly. Thank you. hopefully we will be able to recommence very soon as we wait for a few Cabinet members to come back. Okay, I did say to recommence at 10 past. It is now 12 past, so I will get going with the rest of the agenda. Hopefully everyone's refreshed and had a quick drink, etc. Comfort break. So welcome back. We will move on to item 9, which involves the Stanway Community Centre. So I will just move to the report. Thank you. And we have Councillor Dundas coming to speak on the report as one of the local councillors who I'm sure will support this. I know Councillor Leslie Scott-Butel is one of the councillors I've been working with on this, is very much behind it. And Councillor Lilly later will just introduce the benefits of the report. But first of all, Councillor Dundas, please.
Thank you, Chair. I shall be brief. I'm aware of the hour. I'm speaking on this half as a borough councillor and ward councillor for Stanway, and also half as a parish councillor. Just for the sake of clarity, I do need to declare that I'm a parish councillor as well, because the parish council is mentioned in the report. Yes, I do welcome this. It's been long awaited, I think, by many people in Stanway. It is needed. The current halls on Villa Road are permanently booked out, and it does look as if it's going to be a very impressive landmark building, I think. But we do need to make sure we make a success of it. And I think the easy part is actually building it. The difficult part is delivering a working facility. Now, I know there have been various discussions around the anchor tenant, and I think it really is the anchor tenant which is going to be the key thing to get right on this. Unfortunately, as we know, quite a lot of organisations and halls are suffering financially at the moment because they're not getting any income. And some which perhaps may have been in a position to take it on are no longer in such a position because they're in somewhat financial difficulties. The parish council, which is mentioned in 10.4, does not actually particularly want to take this on. They did not put through an original expression of interest. What they said was that if it didn't look as if a good deal could be arranged, which he thought would work with somebody else, as a service to the community, they felt it was their duty to potentially get involved. And I understand CBC did effectively approach them rather than the other way around. They have said that they are really only interested in taking it on if they have what they consider to be full control of it. At the moment, they own the freehold of the existing community halls, the 3 halls on Villa Road, and they are let out on a peppercorn rent from the parish council to a committee of management, the Stanway Village Hall Management Committee, who run them. So they would probably be looking to do something similar, and maybe possibly actually take on the cost and the organisation of running it themselves. But they're only really interested in doing that if they feel that they have proper control as local authority to local authority, albeit of different tiers, over the facility. They also want to have effectively a final say over the design. It's not actually that easy to design a working community hall. One of the halls at Villa Road actually is very difficult to let out because when it was designed, it is slightly the wrong size, hasn't got the kitchen in the right place, and actually is almost impossible to let at weekends and from up to the time, and all the time it stands empty. If you don't put the kitchen next to the in the right area, if you don't put the bar in the right area, if you haven't got the right storage space, all these things make a very impressive looking building not actually that practical to use for a wide variety of hirers. And it is quite difficult to accommodate maybe a play group one morning, a club in the afternoon, a children's party on Saturday, and maybe a birthday party for adults in the afternoon or the evening. You've got a lot of conflicting things for a general purpose hall. So they really do want to have final say over the design, because they frankly do not want to get landed with something which they feel they can't let out or get revenue from. And frankly, if that happens, then, well, they're prepared to take the hit and say, well, we got it wrong and it's our fault. But what they're not prepared to do is have a design imposed on them, which then they have to manage and make money out of. And I think that's a very fair position to be. The other thing, of course, is they need an answer quite quickly. Like CBC, SBC run a 3-year medium-term financial forecast. We are talking about completion of this facility in September 21. It is not currently in any of their budgets or any of their forecasts. If we're talking about them taking it on in late 2021, they need to start talking now about next year's budget and how they accommodate the cost of running it. And it will have startup costs. They will have to take on extra staff. They will have to market it. They will have to probably take on another clerk to administer it. They simply haven't got the facilities to manage a facility like this. They will probably have to take on a caretaker, cleaning contracts, a whole range of things. So they need to have that budgeted out, and they need to have that ready by autumn this year as they plan their budget to be approved, like CBC's in February. We've talked a lot about money going forward. We're looking to sort out our budget by February. They have to do the same. Now, I'll be absolutely frank, they're going to play, I think they're quite firm on this. If they think it's not going to work and they think that they can't get it done in time, they will not take it on. And that means you either have to find an existing organisation to take it on, or CBC have to accept that you may well have to look to manage it yourself. So you do have to be prepared, or we have to be prepared as Colchester Borough Council, that we may have to manage the facility ourselves if nobody else will take it on. So really what I'm saying is just take these comments on board, talk to the parish council if they are somebody who you think you're minded to be. I know that you've spoken to other organisations, but if you think you're minded that they might be the prime candidate, if you like, conversations need to happen very urgently, I think, if we are not to end up with a facility which is absolutely fantastic, but is sitting there in September 2021 empty with nobody to manage it. That's really my only comment. But yeah, it's a really good project. I've seen the designs. Every iteration gets better. It's in a great position. It will be a really good landmark building for Stanway and for Colchester. So I just really want to see it a big success. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you for those constructive comments. I'll pass to Councillor Lilly, who will just, I think, take those on board and take some of those points back absolutely to this service. But just to round off the report, Mike, please.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I think that we can agree. I can agree with Councillor Dundas that we want the parish council to take it over. Coming from a rural area myself, there's nothing worse than having someone else in charge of a hall that is in your patch, basically. So it is a community facility for the residents of Stanway, so therefore it should be run by either a group, or it should be run by the parish council of Stanway. So we're really happy to continue those conversations, which we've already started, and I'm sure that we'll be able to take that up. So I'll pass the comments over to Joe Besant, who's the lead officer on this, and we'll get some things moving. But tonight is all about releasing the money so that we can crack on with the project and make sure that parish council are ready to take it over.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Mike. So it's really important that we do crack on with this and we agree this report tonight so that Colchester Borough Council can deliver this community facility, this administration. I'm really happy to see in Stanway, with the work of the community involved, the councillors, the parish council too, and the ward councillors who have been involved in this. So thank you for that. Thank you, Mike. And we'll take that back to the teams, some of the feedback from Paul there. Okay, thank you. With that guarantee, can I move to the vote, please, on this? Andrew?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. So, Councillor Fox?
4.
4. Councillor Goss?
4.
4. Councillor Higgins?
4.
4. Councillor King?
4.
For Councillor Lilly.
For
Councillor Luxford-Vaughan.
For
Councillor Young.
For
And Councillor Corey.
For.
That's unanimous, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, including Mike this time. Absolutely unanimous. So thank you. Moving on to the next item, which again is Councillor Lilly's portfolio, which is the request for the delegation and authority for the award of the contract for parking bay sensors. Mike, please.
Yeah, would you like to me to explain about parking sensors for the next half an hour? I'm sure that you'll be thrilled to hear about they are actually quite interesting.
For brevity at this time of the hour. Brevity, thank you.
Okay, right, fair enough. So basically, it is everything that says in the report. We need the money released. CBCR are the partnership team in charge of the. We host the park and partnership, so it's down to us to release that money. But it is pretty straightforward. It's a really good scheme, and it will help us in the future, or help NEP in the future, to change our park and ways and how we do things. So that'll be it. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Mike. Seems straightforward and a more modern way to progress. Okay, thank you for that. With the report as read and we have discussed as a cabinet, I can't see any other indications, so I'll move to the vote. Andrew, please.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Fox.
For.
Councillor Goss.
For.
Councillor Higgins.
For.
Councillor King.
For.
Councillor Lilly.
For.
Councillor Luxford-Vaughan.
For.
Councillor Young. And Councillor Corey.
For.
That's unanimous, Chairman.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Mike. Moving on to item 10, which is the review of governance recommendations, of which I will actually ask you, Andrew, to come back and to explain to us how things will proceed forward for the next municipal year with the review of governance recommendations as outlined in the report, please.
Yep, thank you, Chairman. So briefly, this report draws together a series of governance recommendations from Policy and Public Initiatives Panel and the Governance and Audit Committee to Cabinet, and it also takes forward proposals that you have previously agreed. So very briefly then, the Policy and Public Initiatives Panel at its meeting on the 4th of March 2020 recommended that the Cabinet and Leader model of executive arrangements be retained by the Council, subject to enhancements which are detailed at paragraph 4.1 of the report. And at its meeting on the 17th of June 2020, the panel recommended that Cabinet agree that the panel be authorised to investigate different methods of service delivery, specifically with regard to provision of the grounds maintenance contract. Cabinet had previously agreed that the opportunities for alternative models of service delivery, following the recommendations from the Alternative Methods of Service Delivery Task and Finish Group, would form part of the terms of reference of a policy panel. Governance and Audit at its meeting on 10th of March recommended that you consider the potential benefits of webcasting public meetings and that it be considered further. This has rather been overtaken by events that have happened subsequently. Cabinet at its meeting on the 11th of March agreed with the recommendation from the Scrutiny panel regarding future task and finish groups. You agreed that the Conservation and Environmental Sustainability Task and Finish Group would be succeeded by a subcommittee or a panel. There would normally only be one task and finish group in operation at any time, and that the Heritage Task and Finish Group had concluded their work and should be dissolved. The proposals suggested in response to those recommendations are detailed in paragraph 5.1 of the report, but in summary, the report proposes the creation of a new panel, the Environmental and Sustainability Panel, and that the terms of reference and membership be as set out in the report. The Policy and Public Initiatives Panel be renamed the Policy Panel, and revised terms of reference be as set out in the report. The terms of reference for the Scrutiny Panel and the Governance and Audit Committee be updated as set out in the report. And following a review of the political balance following the recent resignation of a councillor, no changes are necessary, but a recommendation is made to full council regarding membership of the new panel and Governance and Audit Committee for the reasons also mentioned in the report. And finally, the report confirms that the Revolving Investment Fund Committee will be reviewed and a further report be brought back to Cabinet in September. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. There's a number of updates there to our procedures and the recommendation of a whole new panel, which I was part of putting forward, the Environmental and Sustainability Panel, which I'm very interested in us ensuring we commit to our climate change instructions from our climate emergency declaration that we passed last year. And I will ensure we head up that charge to be one of the greenest boroughs in the council, in the country. Our council was rated 3rd for the greenest in the country, but I want to get to be 1st. In order to understand some of those items, I think you've explained it really well, Andrew, so thank you. There's a number of changes that we need to take into account, but I absolutely understand all of those, and I hope that Cabinet members tonight do as well. Are there any questions about how those changes will be implemented? Can't see any hands up at this point. So we understand the changes to the panels that will occur, the new panel that will be created, and the ending of the task and finish groups. And also that one task and finish group will be created along the way, and in abnormal circumstances we may have the setting up of task and finish groups, for example, as we're outlining on waste as a result of the scrutiny panel recommendations tonight. Hopefully that's clear to you all, and therefore just check for any more indications. No, we'll move to the vote. Andrew, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Fox?
For.
For. Councillor Goss?
For.
For. Councillor Higgins?
For.
For. Councillor King?
For.
For. Councillor Lilly?
For.
For. Councillor Luxford Vaughan?
For.
For. Councillor Young?
For.
For. And Councillor Corey?
For.
For. That's unanimous, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent. We'll move now to item 11, which is the COVID finance update. The report is being shared on the screen now. And I'll move to Councillor King, unless I've missed any public speakers. I do not think we've got any, so I'll move to Councillor King for a brief report on the finances.
Thank you very much, Chair. This whole issue has been touched on eloquently by yourself, Councillor Tina Bourne, and of course Councillor Goss, given it frames the conversation we had earlier and yesterday around gas and waste charging and whether or not we have to raise money from residents alongside doing the things we've said we will do: cut costs, make redundancies, it looks certain, and take costs out of the organisation, efficiency or otherwise, as well as go and get some more money if we can from government. So that's been well done. I'll walk through the report though, if I may, because I think it's important that, although addressed in real depth last night, that we just add to the report that we have. The recommendations, Chair, still stand, but as you know, since the writing of the report, as shared to Scrutiny last night, we have had updated information from government about the help that they will provide. A big announcement, a multi-billion-pound announcement, and we're still trying to find out exactly what our share might be, but I'll update on that and then just briefly remind us of where we stand and just confirm again, as we need to keep doing, what the difficult choices are that lie ahead for us, which I've no doubt we'll work our way through. So this is an update on the financial impact of the crisis. We first took a version of this paper in June, and we took it to Scrutiny as well. We had an acceptance, I think it would be fair to say, that what we were doing was the right things. It was always going to be subject to change, a change in our knowledge of income, a recovery as a country, and therefore in Colchester, from the coronavirus and its impact on retail, business and hospitality, and therefore on our income, as well as an update on where government would be. So we will be coming back to this subject again for those who are still avidly listening to us, September, and through the year, both as we shape the new budget and as new news occurs. The paper we've got now, as I say, the recommendations still stand, but if for those who are watching on 5.2, there is a summary of the budget and the losses against that budget. It says lost July, it means the July forecast, and one or two of those are worth bringing out. So the biggest earner for us in terms of income are our car parks, the better part of 4 million. And we still expect that we'll be 3 million down on that at the end of the financial year. Commercial rents is the second largest. We're expecting, frankly, a hemorrhage because of the difficulties with those we lend our premises to in return for a fee. And unsurprisingly, sports and leisure, given so many of them are still closed, the income there is not much better, frankly, than nil. That's a good illustration of the scale of the challenge. The numbers were mentioned by colleagues, and I'll just come to them the once at the close because they do keep moving. The breaking news was Chancellor driven and endorsed, of course, but come from Mr. Jenrick. And there's lots of details here I won't trouble you with unless you have the need, which will be a surprise to this late in the evening. But if you summarize it, there's several forms of help. The most important and critical for us are an income support scheme, which in effect will mean government will pick up 2/3 of our losses this year, and we will pick up 1/3. That's less than the promise, it's true. It's less than COVID furlough support to individuals, but it is still very significant and very welcome. Our current guess, the number keeps moving, is that might be worth about 5.1 million. So the astute amongst you will realise that that makes a big hole in our circa £12 million problem this financial year, but it still leaves a huge amount of difficulty to manage through. The other important thing for us is it gives us an ability to spread tax losses. So that's a reduction in council tax and business rate receipts over 3 years. It doesn't take it away though, and we still have to fill that hole, but it moves it into later years, and that's very helpful. So this is really welcome progress. And I will say again, it's only the right thing to do, that whatever we might think nationally about the handling of the coronavirus outbreak in health terms, there's no doubt across government and local government, a huge effort that's gone into that. And financially, this government has done a fantastic job, whatever the gaps in the scheme. But it is a really big gap for local government. And we, as you said earlier, Chair, are the people who do so much to deliver policy on the ground for the government. So what does that mean? Well, that means we have to make some further assumptions. We don't have certainty on everything. We're not sure exactly whether it's 5.1 million or more or less, could be more or less by a million. We'll find out in the coming weeks. We have to make an assumption, a change of assumptions about council tax raising powers. As we said before, as Councillor Goss said, the choices are hard here. If you want to raise money, garden waste, unpopular, absolutely understood, is one of those choices. Council tax is the other. We had assumed that there might be a relaxation. The referendum limit might have been raised. Our view now is that's less likely. So we're lowering our expectations rather of what we might be able to raise through council tax to the usual £5 for the average Band D property. So the bottom line I've talked to, the black hole this year, good news, the update is we'll halve. The medium-term financial forecast remains broadly, as I talked to Scrutiny last night, at something of the order of £17 million or so, that's over the 4 years, 20 million plus if there's no garden waste agreement, or there's no equivalent to it, which will be the equivalent of a 20% increase in council tax. That's a hard choice, absolutely understand it. As Scrutiny said last night, it's for us to make the decisions, but we are listening, as we discussed earlier, about what those decisions and choices might be, but it will be really tough. So I want to just close on sort of saying, what are we doing at the moment? What we're doing is carrying forward the budget strategy taken through Scrutiny in June and July, and that means looking at where we can raise money, where we can take money out of the cost of our organisation with least impact, and looking at a contribution, a small contribution, as a low tax authority from those who use previously free garden waste service. That's a conversation we'll have to come back to. I just want to sort of stress really our acceptance, again, a challenge from us quite rightly from Scrutiny. Our acceptance, we have a responsibility to get our way through this. I have no doubt we will, but it's absolutely right that I keep saying again that the scale of the challenge in any one year is a couple times greater than, as I understand it, we've managed to work our way through before in terms of taking cost out. We know we will need to take out several £1 million a year is the current view. And we don't want to do that by tax. We're a low tax authority. We will not do, whatever we do, anything that materially has an impact upon those who are vulnerable. The earlier great remark about the smaller shoulders will not put the greater weight on them. We have always been relatively generous on local council tax support, and I know Councillor Goss has made some undertakings of principle, at least, about trying to apply the same to a garden waste service charge if it happens, and also I think universal credit, but whatever form of help we give. From a financial perspective, I stand behind that as well. We'll work our way through it, but it will be a tough combination of tough choices. I showed you on 5.2 that table of challenge, and we've already looked at what you could do to raise just say £1 million, and the answer is it's not quite impossible, but almost, unless it's garden waste or a huge council tax increase which requires itself a referendum. So significant income raising is not, in my view, at this time possible. Cutting costs, cutting service, and sadly taking jobs out is some combination of that is where the heart of this will have to happen, and we're going to have to do that thoughtfully over the weeks and the months that lie ahead. We'll be back to this chair in the autumn. I just want to give some assurance, as I say, that I have no doubt about our collective ability to do this, but we must not walk away from the scale of the problem and our responsibility. We can't borrow, unfortunately, our way out of this. It's a statutory obligation to balance the books. I'm confident we will, but this is an enormous, relative, long-term problem. Last remark, I want to keep acknowledging the value we placed on the views of others, and it's only right to say that when we lobby government, we'll both thank them for what they have done, as well as say, a third down on what we were led to believe is a very significant shortfall. We will need help in future years. I've asked the staff to do some modelling on what that could be, but they do rather roll their eyes at me when I ask them that, not just because of the extra and enjoyable work, but because at this stage, I think most of us do expect that local government is really going to have to carry a significant slice of the national burden, not just in delivery of services and COVID support, but in terms of the financial consequences of an extraordinary combination of health and economic challenge. And I'll leave you at that, Chair and colleagues and the watching visitor, and recommend the report accordingly.
Thank you, Councillor King. As usual, I think you're very fair there and outline the facts in a balanced way. You're very fair about the government. I would say the Conservative Chancellor has put forward some progressive policies today, and we'll have to see how the detail works out with that. Again, you were fair about the economic policies that some have been quite successful, some have been slow in coming. But I want to thank you as well for the work you've done with businesses in our borough. In terms of focusing on the finances, absolutely important. Although I would say, if you're being fair, we do have to understand that the lives lost across the country cannot be accounted for in terms of pounds and pence. It is a failure, unfortunately, by the government in terms of the health impact of this crisis. So we can say that economically, some of the drivers they have supported, but they have failed to support all of our loved ones and friends in this coronavirus crisis. And I don't want to labour that point, but it's not to be forgotten. And also that not to labour the point further, but the promise that we have had from the Conservative Minister that they would support us to support our residents, I will lobby at national level to ensure that they do follow that promise. And you're right, we will do it by thanking them for some of the support they've given us. But it is unfortunately a promise they have broken, which leaves us in a more broken situation with our finances. But I will thank you for the work you've done, especially to support businesses in this time, to get the grant out to them, to the local businesses, to work with the bid to reopen the town centre in such a way that has given our residents confidence. And also I want to thank people who have worked together in communities and the coordination of our council to support those communities. Officers such as Pam Donnelly, who've chaired the One Colchester board that has brought together all of our partners that we work with, from the police to the county council to voluntary services, Community 360, to Colchester Borough Homes, who've done proactive work with our residents. So yes, we talk about the finances and how important that is, but that wider network that has been brought together by this council has been really, really important, giving residents support, life-changing support, confidence with business and confidence in our town. And I thank you, David, for outlining where the black holes are and reaffirming that there are serious decisions that this council needs to take and all of its members need to face up to in the economic situation we face today. So thank you for that update. I would just check if there's any other comments from other councillors.
Chairman, Councillor Luxford-Vaughan has a hand raised.
Oh, thank you. Councillor Luxford-Vaughan. Andrea, please.
Thank you, Richard. On the back of that speech, this is obviously a detail, but I felt it needed to be, or a comment needed to be made on it, because I'm going to be asked to vote on accepting this. And 2.3, I just wanted to say 2.3 is about allocating to 250,000 to officers to progress a local plan, which I'm happy to support. It's just the detail of section 8. In section 8.2, it talks about the funding will enable the delivery of a strategic growth development planning document for tendering Colchester Borders Garden Community. In my opinion, that is premature detail and potentially predetermines the decision that has yet to be taken by the local plan committee, and therefore I want to make it quite clear that I do not support that part of that report. Equally, we haven't specified in any of that section that we would need, should the plan be adopted, we would need to do public consultation of the modifications, and as that is a statutory requirement, I think those details should be included in this report when it goes to full council to approve that funding allocation.
Thank you. I'll pass to Councillor King. Sometimes in terms of the detail, it's how much you put in or how much you don't. And Councillor King, I'm sure, will reassure you, of course, that we'll give the money for the consultation that is required as part of the local plan. Councillor King.
Very briefly, I agree, of course, with the latter point. My assurance to my colleague is this, that this is normal practice, that a report which is about a forward estimating position does not include, and it will be a very long one if it did, all of the associated rules, sets and conditions. It's an overview at this stage of some particular, it pulls out some particular items and gives due mention to them. It wouldn't be necessary for us to say that we'll do this properly, which is really what you're saying. You know, as a cabinet, we're bound to act according to the statutory framework in which we operate, and to take all due advice when we must, and to share and show and be transparent when we must. This is a summary and a heading and a direction, and we've already undertaken to share more on the way ahead when we have it. It is absolutely, and I've said this I think 3 times this evening myself, it's absolutely none of us, this cabinet, and the record will show this, and I'm reaffirming it, none of us are sneaking anything past anybody, nor making any assumption of what the local plan committee will do next week. But for budget terms, I hope, Andrew, you understand this, we have to make assumptions, as I say, and there are a host of them, much more than usual in the budgetary framework because of our circumstances. So we assume that we may need to have money, but it's not, we have to have the money in the pot for the decision then that separately gets taken. So I do assure you this is in accordance with good practice and is absolutely not a presumption of a decision, because it doesn't bind the decision that's yet to come. It just enables it if that decision is taken.
Thank you, David. And I have Councillor Higgins as well, please.
Thank you very much, Leader. I just want to query the decision 2.2. It's the revised Amphora dividend forecast, because surely that comes up in paper 13 of this agenda as well, and it's the actual recommendation from the governance panel. So I'm just wanted to query, are we voting on it now, and then does that supersede the vote for item 13? Thank you.
Could happily ask Andrew Weavers just for clarification on that. Andrew, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I have a suggestion. Perhaps you'd like to consider the two items together.
Yeah, happy to do so. Thank you. Therefore, could I ask Councillor Higgins you just to outline that consideration from the governance report to add to the recommendation that Councillor King has got incorporated in his report, because they do fit together. If we could understand what your recommendation is as well for the later paper, then that would be helpful to take them together.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, the recommendation in the later paper is to agree the revised dividend forecast for Amphora. Last year, of course, Amphora did very well, and the dividend was over £500,000. But of course, a lot of Amphora's income comes from things that just cannot take place at the moment. So such as the events, which was very successful last year, of course, they can't take place yet and probably won't take place till next January. So there is a shortfall, and the Governance and Audit Committee has recommended, therefore, that the company's dividend to Colchester Borough Council is £226,000 for this coming year. So I put that as a recommendation to you for that from that paper.
Thank you. Hayley, can I just ask that you bring that recommendation just up again so we're all absolutely clear that we're taking paper 13I alongside the COVID paper of 11I. So that recommendation there, as Councillor Higgins just said, of the value of 226,000 to be accepted from the recommendation from the Governance and Audit Committee. So we listen to that committee, we accept that, and that recommendation, we will have to vote on it separately, I think, Andrew, but to take it together now. So if there's no other comments on David's paper item 11, we can agree those recommendations and 13, which runs concurrently, as Teresa has just pointed out. Andrew, please.
So I think we should take the vote on 13 first.
Okay.
Yeah. So you're voting on the item 13.1, the recommendation to accept the revised forecasted dividend as set out. Thank you, Hayley, on the screen. So Councillor Fox?
For.
For Councillor Goss?
For
Councillor Higgins?
For
Councillor King?
For
Councillor Lilly?
For
Councillor Luxford Vaughan?
For
Councillor Young? And Councillor Corey?
For.
So that's unanimous, Chairman. So do you now want to proceed to the vote on item 11.1?
Yes, please, and thank you, Hayley, for presenting those. Thank you.
Yep. And to make it clear, you're voting on recommendations 2.1, 2.2 and 2.3. So Councillor Fox?
For.
Councillor Goss? For Councillor Higgins? For Councillor King? For Councillor Lilly? For Councillor Luxford Vaughan? For Councillor Young? For Councillor Corey?
For.
That's unanimous, Chairman. Thank you.
Chair, excuse me, just a point of detail, but the recommended decisions are 2.1 to 2.4. And I believe we just referred orally to 2.3. So as long as we're content that we are signing off for all of them, then that's fine.
Yes, Chairman, sorry, I don't know if that was my mistake. Yes, you voted on recommendations 2.1 to 2.4.
Thank you. Thank you for that correction, David, and thank you for Andrea and Teresa's contributions there and David's answers. Worthwhile to discuss, and the contributions on the finances. I thank you, David, and the team for the efforts that they've done to bring those reports together and keep the balances steady during this crisis, but we've got a lot of work to do. Okay, thank you. So moving on to the further report on the financial monitoring report, the end of year, so that's of last year. David, if you could briefly take us through that, thank you.
I was hoping instead, Chair, that we might really spend our time walking through the 20 or so pages, but given that I seem to be the only person with that appetite for pleasure, I will keep it very briefly, 4 or 5 brief points. This is an end of year report, as it says. It's for general fund, which covers our non-housing, and it's for the housing. So Councillor Adam Fox is steward of that, and I merely watch how much he spends so well. The description of what is being done is within those detailed annexes, and of course governance and audits and others look through this at the right time of their cycle. And the key headlines are probably just briefly worth mentioning. 2 papers show a small deficit at end of year on the general fund of just under 200k, and $250,000 on the housing revenue account. In the circumstances, my own take is that that's very acceptable. In relative to scale, the HRA has a spending income of about 43 million in ins and outs. So getting that to the button is always a difficult thing to go and do. It's a small variance relative to the whole. Reserves and balances are there to get the good news of a bit of an underspend, which of course may not always be good news. Things not done. All the other way around is on this occasion, and I'll finish with the Section 151's officer view. To me, it's a good result in view of the COVID issues at the financial year end, which we mustn't forget. They are described at $250,000 for the general fund alone. So I recommend that we confirm, we note the financial performance for both sectors, general fund and housing revenue account accordingly.
Thank you, David. Very succinct. And I'd like to thank you for last year's efforts for a balanced budget, even in tough times. And also thank you to Paul Cook, the Section 151 officer, and his team for their flexibility, their honesty, and their dedication.
Thank you, Leader. You forestall me, but also I'll just say that they are a great bunch. I hope that some of them, I think Paul might be there having his tea or something nicer. He wants to escape to France when he can, but we're not letting him. And also for Dan, of course, Dan Gascoigne. It's a small but perfectly formed team. We're all really appreciative of what they're doing for us. Thank you.
Thank you, David. I see no hands up. So therefore, I will ask Andrew to reappear and we'll move to the vote on those recommendations. Andrew, are you there? Are you unmuted?
Yeah, sorry. So just to confirm, you're voting on recommendation 2.1. Councillor Fox?
4.
4. Councillor Goss?
4.
4. Councillor Higgins?
4.
4. Councillor King?
4.
4. Councillor Lilly?
4.
4. Councillor Luxford-Vaughan?
4.
4. Councillor Young?
4.
4. And Councillor Corey?
4.
4. That's unanimous, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. And we move to the final report on finance, which is the Capital Outturn Review 2019-20. So this is a capital focus from last year as well. Councillor King, over to you.
Excuse me a second.
While we wait for the bells of your clocks to go, the capital schemes sit separately to the revenue, and this is where we invest in the borough invest in larger schemes and projects. Councillor King will hopefully.
Eli Shaw, after that unintended wake-up call, which says we should all be having our tea, plus all of those who are watching, in their hundreds, I suspect. This is another cracker from the finance team, a part of the huge amount of work, to be serious, they have to do at in year's close, and then all that follows on from that with external as well as a measure of internal audit. A few brief points to make. As you say, this is about the capital programme performance against budget for the last financial year, and again it covers both the general fund and the HRA. I will not, you'll be pleased to hear, go through all of that in any real detail. The headline in 1.2 of the expenditure is perhaps the thing most to note. It's 46.2 million against a programme intent of 53. Now that counts as a spending delivery of 81% in previous years, 87% this. So close to spending £9 in 10 of what you intend is not bad at all in the circumstances of uncertainty with capital programmes. Anybody who's run them, Councillor Goss has probably done that kind of thing in his checkered career, will know how things don't quite come to time and invoices don't land when you want them. All of that has an impact on how the budgets deliver. And of course, let's be reminded that COVID cut across our work and is going to be a major disturbance to cost and schedule for the coming financial year. It's one extra reason for us to look, as we intend, at the capital programme, how we manage it and how we both drive and report performance. Lots of material in the attachments. I would just say this, let's not forget, as you started to say, Chair, at the bonds, there's some absolutely great projects in here. You know, my 2 or 3 we could pick out, any of us, but I would say just remind ourselves of some regional class, national class facilities coming through, and Northern Gateway and much else besides. Super fast broadband is a fantastic thing for a town that wants to attract a leading edge business, digital and creative businesses. And of course, moving the money across to Councillor Fox for him to spend it on achieving affordable housing always works for me, as I know it does for the rest of our colleagues. So I go no further, but I commend the paper accordingly and recommend we approve it.
Thank you, Councillor King. Just to sum up in 3 points some of what you said there, we're providing capital to provide homes for our residents, capital to encourage business and further investment in our town, and capital to allow projects like Northern Gateway that will provide residents with a plethora of sporting and leisure activities and be a regional hub. So I can't wait for that to open, and I'm glad you've been giving it the capital that it needs, and hopefully post-COVID we'll be able to see the spectacular venue that is, because I think we talk about Northern Gateway and the public probably still aren't fully aware of the fantastic offer that is going to be. So when people are up in that area by the junction, by the football ground, I hope they can take a look at the work almost completed there with the cycling track laid out, and the rugby and football pitches, everything that's on offer there. And I hope you'll confirm it's almost complete.
It almost is. I think it's very well described what we have. Paul Cook has briefly come online, which is always a good thing to see. So I hope we heard our thanks to him and the colleagues beforehand. But we're all looking forward to getting both completion, which is including some late improvements, but also the access that we need with the help of Essex County Council. This really will be something to celebrate, and there's much more to come as we move to south of Northern Gateway with the leisure entertainment facilities. You know, we really are building across the borough, across Colchester itself, extended Colchester, some absolutely fantastic leading edge facilities. And the more we can make the most of that and get that news out in the coming months, we can all agree, the better. Thank you.
Thank you. I doubt there's anything Paul needs to add, but please do indicate if you do need to add anything, Paul.
No, thank you very much, Chair, and thank you for the support for what the finance team is doing. I'll pass that on. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your hard work, Paul. Okay, well then I move to the vote. I've seen no other indications. I've only seen the next cabinet member appear behind Councillor Young, a lovely dog there. If the dog wants to vote, please bring her in. So I move to you, Andrew, to move to the vote, please.
Thank you, Chairman. So the recommendation is to approve the 2019-20 capital outturn. Councillor Fox?
For.
For. Councillor Goss?
For.
For. Councillor Higgins? For. Councillor King? For. Councillor Lilly? For. Councillor Luxford-Vaughan? For. Councillor Young? For. And Councillor Corey? For. That's unanimous, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. We'll move to the next report, which is Councillor King again, and I'm sure you'll give us a full analysis of this, but very quickly, about the Member Development Group annual report and the recommendation for recreditation of the member charter status.
It is my pleasure to dominate the screen again, Chair. This is our own homework, really. We commit ourselves as a council and as a cabinet to helping our members improve themselves and also to help them be aware of what may matter to the borough and the council as a whole and to their wards. So through the sum of the year, a huge amount of work, and I thank the Democratic Services team and the ever-patient Richard Clifford, gets a special mention there, and for helping the Members Development Group help that process through. There's quite a lot of detail, which I don't think you need to know. But what we need to know is that this matters, and the small sums of money here and the aims and objectives do coincide. You know, this is self-learning mostly, but enabled by our high-quality team and all they do to help us. It shows here there's a couple of winners. Martin Warren is on. He may not. Yes, he is on the line. And Councillor Tina Bourne, I think, got 10 development sessions in. I think that's pretty brilliant when everybody's life is so busy. But what we seriously show here is that there is an absolute acceptance by the great majority of members that in their service to their wards and their council, they have to invest some time in understanding what is happening, in going to briefings and drawing in some information, and in looking at what could help them do yet better. So I say no more. This is a good position for us to be in. Charter status is not given lightly. We've looked at Charter Status Plus. We'll come back to that when times are more settled. But we are, I think, as a collective, performing pretty well, and there is an appetite to do better. I commend the report and the decisions in 2.1 and 2.2 accordingly.
Thank you, David. I see no indications, and I think we all acknowledge the points you made, and that we want to move forward with charter status to ensure that we remain a positively seen council externally and internally. So I'll move to the votes, please, Andrew.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Fox?
For.
Councillor Goss? For. Councillor Higgins? For. Councillor King?
Absolutely for.
For. Councillor Lilly? For. Councillor Luxford-Vaughan? For. Councillor Young? For. And Councillor Corey?
For.
That's unanimous, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. And we'll move to the next item, which is item 12, Policy and Public Initiatives Work Programme. And we will talk to the items on that, but I'll invite Councillor Warnes to speak if he is still there and would like to shortly just put forward his points.
Hello, Chair. Yeah, Chair and Leader, there's no need for me to speak. The issue was covered in item 10.1 and nailed down in Appendix 2. So thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Warnes. So the programme is outlined. The policy panel did talk about a number of key issues, one being the item that Councillor Warnes was referring to, and secondly, an item to do with heritage boards, and that involves Councillor Young's portfolio. So Councillor Young.
Thank you, Leader. We've had a lot of discussion this evening about resources and the need to see where we could save money. However, there's an increasing appetite and desire for us to invest more in our heritage. We've had a discussion earlier about the Roman wall. The last time we were together at Cabinet, we had a recommendation around Gosbecks in terms of a visitor centre being developed there. And then we've got the recommendation this evening from the Policy and Public Initiatives panel from a Maggie Woodley about display boards. And I just wanted to praise up Alderman Spivey, actually, because he has been working with a group and they've done a number of interpretation boards that are around the Roman wall, signifying significant parts of the wall. I think that project has been completed now. But I do accept the recommendation from the Policy and Public Initiatives panel. However, you know, we're going to have a really tough time ahead of us in the short term, at least. And every penny that we do spend has to be carefully considered. And this will be one of those areas that we'll be carefully considering. Signage is a popular item. It's a subject that Councillor Goss and I often exchange emails on. And there's a lot of public appetite for more signage. This one in particular relates to Middle Mill, and it will be put in, as I say, along with all the other requests for funding in terms of our heritage.
Thank you, Julie. And I see Councillor Fox's hand raised as well.
Thank you, Leader. I just wanted to comment. Councillor Warnes, I know, was keen in terms of the Policy and Public Initiatives panel, that it took forward the recommendations around future delivery of parks maintenance service. And one of the things that he's keen on and that I'm keen on as cooperative councillors is that we look at routes for a cooperative or mutual model. And I just wanted to put that on record, that I think that this council would take a real advantage from looking at those sorts of approaches. I think that they're really good value for money, but they also deliver really good quality services and involving the community, involving staff, and involving other partners is really key. I know it's something that we all value around this cabinet, and I think that taking forward those sorts of approaches is something that we really should adopt in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. It's a recommendation I wholeheartedly agree with. We want the policy panel, like we have given the scrutiny panel, the time and space to scrutinise and work through. The grounds maintenance contract is something too we want to see them work through, look at all of the options. And we know that mutuals and cooperatives are a fantastic way of getting greater involvement and participation from workers and the community. And also that we can look at ways to build our economy back stronger and more resilient and more fair after COVID. So I wholeheartedly agree. I may not have cooperative attached to my councillor name, but I'm very much of the opinion that they are useful and worthwhile and should be explored. So with those recommendations and the comments from Julie, are we happy to note that report? Can we move to the vote, please, Andrew?
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Fox.
4.
4. Councillor Goss.
4.
4. Councillor Higgins.
4.
4. Councillor King.
4.
4. Councillor Lilly.
4.
4. Councillor Luxford Vaughan.
4.
4. Councillor Young.
4.
4. And Councillor Corey.
4.
4. That's unanimous, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Item 13 we have covered, which went with the financial report earlier this evening. We move straight to item 14, which is the amended approach to the supply of IT, which builds on the report we had, I think, last Cabinet. So moving over to you, Councillor Luxford-Vaughan, please, to present this.
Oh, luckily I'm still off mute. So basically, we have previously asked the question about delegating the award of the contract for leased ICT devices, and also a management package that was to go alongside that. And due to coronavirus, the prices basically have changed, so it no longer is the cheapest option for us to go for leased devices, but to go for bought items instead. So really all we're asking is that, because there's a change in that specification, that members are happy to go ahead with those delegated powers and award the contract.
Thank you, Councillor Luxford-Vaughan. I think that's straightforward, as you explained, and builds on the report from last time. I see no other hands up. So thank you. I'll move straight to the vote. Andrew, please.
Yep, thank you. Councillor Fox. 4. 4. Councillor Goss.
4.
4. Councillor Higgins.
4.
4. Councillor King.
4.
4. Councillor Lilly.
4.
4. Councillor Luxford-Vaughan.
4.
4. Councillor Young.
4.
4. And Councillor Corey.
4.
4. Thank you, Chairman. That's unanimous.
Thank you, Andrew. And we move to the next item, item 15, which is progress of responses to the public. Can I invite Richard, the Democratic Services Officer, to confirm that these have been carried out?
I can confirm, Chairman, that the responses have all been dealt with.
Thank you, Richard. So therefore, we're happy to move on from that. There's no vote needed on that item. Thank you to the officers who've ensured the responses have been made to the public, and for the politicians who've contributed to those answers as well. So that concludes the end of the meeting for the substantial items. Therefore, in order to move to the end of the meeting and for us to discuss the confidential items, I will move to Councillor Young to move the motion for the exclusion of the public, please.
In accordance with section 100A(4) of the Local Government Act 1972, and in accordance with the Local Authorities Executive Arrangements, Meetings and Access to Information, England Regulations 2012, to exclude the public, including the press, from the meeting, so that any items containing exempt information, for example, personal, financial or legal advice in Part B of this agenda, printed on yellow paper, can be decided. Exempt information is defined in section 101 and schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972.
Thank you, Councillor Young. We move straight to the vote on that, please, Andrew.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. So to approve to exclude the public, Councillor Fox. 4. 4. Councillor Goss.
4.
4. Councillor Higgins.
4.
4. Councillor King.
4.
4. Councillor Lilly.
4.
4. Councillor Luxford-Vaughan.
4, but I warn you, I've lost the link to the next meeting.
Okay, 4. Thank you. Councillor Young.
4.
4. And Councillor Corey.
4.
4. That's unanimous, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, councillors, and thank you to all those who have been attending, and thank you to those watching. Good night.